Hey gang, welcome to Ozone Late Night. This is, I am sorry to say, the final part of our 3-part John Carpenter retrospective. If you haven't been listening all along, and I don't know why you wouldn't have been, I don't know how you get to part 3 without listening to 1 and 2. If you haven't, go listen to part 1 and 2. But we have taken 6 films from John Carpenter's just amazing filmography, and we've broken them into pairs. We did part 1 and 2. That was covering Assault on Precinct 13, Escape from New York, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, and Starman. And now we arrive into the back end of Carpenter's career with 2 movies that I didn't realize when we were initially starting to talk about them are a decade apart. We are talking about 1988's They Live and 1998's Vampires, or John Carpenter's Vampires, which, oh boy, we have a lot to say about these 2 films, and it has just been an absolute blast to talk about John Carpenter and his career and these movies in particular, and I think there may be more movie discussions to come in the future, but for now, oh boy, this is quite a pair of movies to talk about. So sit back, enjoy, and let's get talking about Carpenter and his films. Here we go. All right, everybody. This is actually sort of a bittersweet intro because this is now the last part of our 3-part John Carpenter retrospective, which I am very sad to say because I have been having an absolute blast doing this. But boy, do we have a pair of films to talk about tonight. So
we might not get asked back. They might.
Well, fortunately, no one's ever asked me back to anything. Therefore, I ask everybody back because I know what it's like to have the door continuously slammed in your face. But so as you can hear, I'm welcoming back once again Dr. Doug Bielmeyer, whose album at the publishing of this it's one more week. It would be, it's going to be out on October 27th. So whenever you hear this, if it's before then, it's not out yet. If it's after then, it is out. So we'll just cover both sides of the base. Very easy.
So check a calendar, and
go find Music for Billionaires and buy it legally. I guess you couldn't buy it illegally now that I state that, so that doesn't really make any sense. So just buy it. Just buy it in general. There may be a guy in the street who opens the trench coat and there are CDs hanging from it.
Yeah.
I would advise you buy it from that man. Those are always quality resellers.
His name is Rick. Yeah, he works directly underneath me. So
yeah. So if Rick's got a CD for you, go buy it. That's fine. Otherwise, order it from the link that's on the screen. I've posted it in every one, so I'll just put the same link there. And awesome. So Doug, how you doing? Ready for another set of Carpenter films?
It's bittersweet. It's bittersweet because this is the last of this is the third one or the last of 3 that we'll do, and I mean, like, cue the Boys to Men music, or what was the beautiful song? The beautiful song at the end of A League of Their Own. I feel like we could.
Oh, this used to be my playground.
Yes. This used to be my podcast. So
this used to be my John Carpenter retrospective.
Yep. So,
but anytime, a little tip for folks: if you want to get the flavor of the show, even if you're not listening, sometime just go find an empty ashtray, breathe deep of the many empty cigarette butts and their staleness. And
maybe
John Carpenter will appear like a djinn in front of you and say, what kind of gore would you like to see tonight? And then, he'll go play NBA Jam.
Yeah, NBA Jam.
He likes NBA games.
Well, I think if the audience can wipe the tears from their face, I think they're really going to enjoy these two movies, and I feel like I was going to say these 2 films, and I stuttered a bit, not just because I'm bad at this, but because I really think these are movies, and we can obviously talk more about that, but I feel these 2 movies enter that category because they have a very different sort of feel than some of the other ones that we've talked about. They're obviously a little bit later in Carpenter's career, or maybe the midway point. Who knows? It's still going on. It's still happening. But they have a very different vibe than I think some of the things we've watched before. But then again, at the end of the day, it's John Carpenter, so some of the things that you've at least come accustomed to, if you know any of his movies, or even in just the last movies we've discussed, a lot of those things are still there.
Yeah, this is the middle films I thought were very interesting to talk about. I think these are equally for very different reasons. I agree with you. They are both the sharpest I think his bitterness and cynicism has been in many ways, but they also feel the most unreal a lot of the time. They don't feel like they are very grounded at all. Not that, Halloween 3 with androids was certainly not what we would call grounded necessarily, but it did feel like it was supposed to be something that potentially could happen. It did not feel like it was in a different reality, a Terry Gilliam type of thing, where something like Brazil does not feel like it's actually grounded in reality. It feels like a parable or, a fairy tale story of some kind. And this would be a Grimm's fairy tale in many ways, these two films. So let's talk about what we're talking about. Let's point them out. I'm sorry, did I cut you off? What were we going to say?
No. I was like, let's not leave the audience in the dark. Let's tell them what we're doing here.
Yeah. So we're talking about movies that I didn't realize these were 10 years apart, but they actually are. The first one is one that most people have probably at least heard of, if not seen, which is They Live from 1988. That one has infused the pop culture in many, many ways beyond the film.
Absolutely.
And then the second one will be Vampires, or John Carpenter's Vampires. I've seen it both ways, from 1998, which, maybe saying John Carpenter's Vampires is a little bit more specific, because if you just search for Vampires movie, you're never going to find it. So, that is our pair of jet black, soul-infused Carpenter films that, these are some interesting movies to take apart. And I think the one I had seen the most recently, I saw They Live. I think I rewatched that maybe 5 or 6 years ago, so that one pretty recent. Vampires I haven't seen in at least a decade, if not 15 or more years. No. Not for any particular reason, although I have to admit, when we get to that, my opinion on that movie has changed over the years in some ways. But that's I have the soundtrack. I love the soundtrack for Vampires. So I listen to the soundtrack more than I've ever watched the movie, to be honest. But we'll get to that. So
absolutely.
Have these movies that have you seen Vampires more recently than that? I'm assuming by your reaction you have.
So I took the summer course in John Carpenter this summer.
Summer of Cynicism, baby.
yeah. It actually paired really well with this August, and for some reason I don't know why. But really enjoyed, and that was the first time I had seen They Live. So I had, until August of this year, I knew a lot about it. I knew the references, and I knew, one of the quintessential lines or one of the classic lines that come from that movie. I knew it, and I knew the reference, but it was just one of those. Everybody, I think, has one of those, where it's just like, oh, I never got around to watching that one or that in the series, and that was the one for me. So I've seen that most recently. And then I would say probably every few years since it's come out, I get in the mood to watch Vampires. And I think my opinion of it has changed over the years. I think when I initially saw it, I thought it was pretty ridiculous. I think at one point I really started to think it was not good. And then more recently, and I think that's one of the reasons I picked it for, when we said, let's pick 3 movies to talk about, each of us, I picked it as one of mine because I think there's I've got a bunch of stuff in my notes about it, but I think it's the type of movie that if you take it very seriously, then you could get offended really, really easily. And I think if you look at it a little bit different than some of the other Carpenter movies, even like They Live, if you look at it in a very different way, then I think you can just have a good time. I think you can just like let yourself go and have a good time. but there's some issues with it, and like any Carpenter movie we've talked about so far, there's been parts of the movies that are rough topics and kind of taboos in film. So this one kind of just stays on the path, and I do want to just say right off the bat, it's interesting that you thought, or not that you thought, but that you actually saw the date of when Vampires was released, and it's almost 10 years after They Live. And I felt the same way. I thought it was an mid or earlier 90s film. I didn't know it was this late into the 90s, almost at the turn of the century. Especially after watching it and just kind of seeing the messaging and the kind of values behind it. It feels more like a movie that could have come out in 1988 instead of 1998. But we'll get to Vampires later. They Live is a good place to start.
Yeah, so 1988's They Live, which is that doesn't surprise me when you say the pop iconography of it and the kind of. Yeah. I think a lot of people that's the case. I don't think it did. We'll get into the numbers in a minute, but I don't know that it did particularly well. Ironically, I think Vampires, if I read correctly, is the one that's done the best of all of his movies as far as how much money it made. But They Live it does not surprise me that it is not more well known, because it is a very pointed critique on a number of fundamental things. And so it is not surprising, as with many works of this type, that it is more of the kind of recognize, like the catchphrase, which if you bet money that I wouldn't have that screen captured, then you've lost some money. I'll just give you a forewarning. But it's that, and of course it's the adoption of some of the phrases into some pop culture artworks and things like that. It does not shock me. I somehow kept forgetting with this movie that it was based on a short story, and even the short stories when it came from, which was early 60s, I think there's a lot of where I'm like, oh, okay, now this makes a lot of sense. So, but before we get too far into the actual story and dissecting the movie, let's do the numbers on it. As usual, as I said, it's 1988. I will let you take over in the budgetary evaluation and casting department.
Absolutely. And just like you said, it's They Live is a 1988 American science fiction action horror film written and directed by John Carpenter. Based on, like you just said, on the 1963 short story 8 O'Clock in the Morning. It's by Ray Nelson. And the movie stars, or the book is, or the short story is by Ray Nelson. It's starring Roddy Piper. I can't say that with a straight face after watching the movie this recently. Keith David, who it's not Childs, it's Keith David. And then Meg Foster, which I have an interesting note about Meg Foster we can talk about in a little bit. The film follows an unnamed drifter named Roddy Piper, who discovers through special sunglasses that the ruling class are aliens concealing their appearance and manipulating people to consume, breed, and conform to the status quo via subliminal messages in mass media. So just to talk a little bit about who's doing what, it was produced by Larry Franco. As we mentioned, it was based on the short story by Ray Nelson. It was directed and the screenplay was written by John Carpenter. So we have both John Carpenter directing and writing. As I mentioned, we have Roddy Piper, Keith David, Meg Foster. Let's see, the cinematography was different. It was Gary B. Kibbe, I think is how you pronounce the name, or Kib. Let's see, music was once again by John Carpenter, and we get a very John Carpenter score, very John Carpenter sounding score. I would say this is his middle or later period score, so I'll talk a little bit about that, what I mean by that. It was released on November 4th, 1988. It has a runtime of 94 minutes. And here's the thing, the budget was $3 million. And the box office was $13 million in North America. So this movie actually did very well as far as box office is concerned. And the budget was very low. This is not the glorious Starman budgets of $24 million. we're back now down to earth at a $3 million budget.
Interesting. Now I'm curious. What was the movie he did right before this? What was the movie that was preceded this? Let me take a look. There's a writer.
I don't
Where
know
is
that offhand.
his? I tell you, IMDb has just gotten so bad. Where is the? I mean, really, why would you not have director at the top of his thing? Okay, here we go. Director. So this was 88. So prior to this was Prince of Darkness and then Big Trouble. Wow. So this is interesting. That's interesting because I don't. Big Trouble in Little China, I don't believe did very well. I don't know what Prince of Darkness did. I was kind of curious if there was a big movie that came before this that would set up. Okay, well that was great. We're going to see this. I don't know what Prince of Darkness's box office, but I don't remember. I don't perceive that one as being particularly successful. Oh no. Okay, wait a minute. Oh no, I'm sorry. Well, maybe this explains it then. So, interestingly, we're not going to spend too long on Prince of Darkness because that's what we're here to talk about. But Prince of Darkness had the same budget and made $14.1 million in the U.S. and Canada. So perhaps his star was kind of at a high point, and I'm just misremembering. So that that makes more sense. Well, it's interesting
because in '84 he does Starman, which is the big budget, the big film, and it does okay. I believe they do get their money back plus a little bit more, but then he goes back into these lower budget movies that he actually gets a really great return on. So,
okay, here's the interesting bit. In between that, between Starman and Prince of Darkness, Big Trouble in Little China had a $25 million budget, only made 11. So that would be considered a failure, which is just bonkers.
So he is kind of all over the place, right? He is, and by the way, like when I say he's all over the place, like I mean this is this is one of the greatest directors of our time. So when I'm saying he's all over the place, I'm not saying, but he does. It seems like he's working different things. I mean, you think about like somebody like Ridley Scott, right? He kind of started with Alien and kind of moved through and did a lot of different movies. I mean, Black Rain is one of the movies he did. But he kind of had this consistency, and reinvention throughout his career. But it kind of seems like, one of the things I've noticed about Carpenter is that there's a lot of different types of movies that he's doing and at a lot of different budgets. And
high degree of versatility. High degree of versatility in the subject matter, but at the same time, there's always that Carpenter signature.
You know who's directing, you know who wrote it, you know who directed it, you know who's involved. But yeah, definitely very different types of movies.
Yeah, it really is interesting to me that this movie did that well. I'm happy to hear that because that then partially explains why it seeped into the culture. Because generally, if a movie's a failure, you wouldn't see as much of it outside of little things, but They Live does. I you know what? Probably, and plus I was young at the time. Maybe I'm just not. I wouldn't have been going to see this in the theater. I would have only been 10. So, it's not like my dad would have taken me to this necessarily.
Right.
So that could be why I'm misremembering it too. Maybe I just generally now look at Carpenter as, unfortunately, a director who isn't in the pop culture anymore. But that's great. I'm glad it did well.
Well, and even I don't know how much stock you put in Rotten Tomatoes, but even just looking at that, the movie still sort of sits at around an 86%. Now being almost 30, 40 years old. It still sits there, and the way the critic consensus is that it's this politically subversive blend of horror and sci-fi. And it's an underrated genre film from John Carpenter. I feel like that's the way it feels. I still feel like with this movie, They Live, there is this real strong sort of political undercurrent within it, and there's a message in it, and there's the cynicism, but there's also the kind of manipulation. We'll talk about it next, Vampires, but Vampires is holding strong at 43%. If you do the top critics, it drops to 20%. So I don't know. Some people don't put a lot of stock in Rotten Tomatoes because of, this and that. But even if you look at the audience score for They Live, it's at about 80%, where the audience score for Vampires is around a 47.
Yeah, that does not shock me. I think that just in an objective sense, They Live is a far stronger film. I think it is so direct and well executed in terms of its message. And this is a perfect movie length Twilight Zone episode. That's exactly what I feel like. This is the Twilight Zone episode made properly, with a full budget, with an excellent cast. I mean, not that the Twilight Zone didn't have excellent cast members, but they were shorter episodes. And, they were made on a budget. You could tell a lot of times that there was no background. It's like, okay, that's
they
a painted background.
Minutes. They had 42 minutes. They had to wrap it up. It had to begin and start. Yeah.
Yeah, and there were things that the Twilight Zone was never going to say as directly as this one says, which is, both a strength and at times, was probably a censorship type of thing or a standards type of thing, or was frowned upon by the network, whereas this does not have any of those limitations. So I'm not surprised by those scores. Yeah, this to me, when I watched this again, I was thinking, because I recently watched the first, I think it's considered a TV movie or a mini series of V. I don't know if you remember V.
Oh yeah,
from way back. And this one is kind of the cynical version of that. Because in that one, the aliens come, they're uncovered, and they're driven off. But everybody's alive. Hey, we all won, or most of them are alive. And this one, it's like, well, we won, but everybody's fucking dead. So it's like it is. Not everybody makes it. Although ultimately, as far as we know, it was still a successful stopping or revealing of the aliens, which we're jumping way ahead, but whatever. I mean, it's a 30-year-old movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, in Battlestar Galactica and like all these movies where it's like, what if, I mean, that one's pretty grim too, but just this idea of what if aliens became part of society. And there's so many different, there's heartwarming tales of like Mac and Me, there's E.T. as we talked about last episode. So this one takes on the whole idea that, what if they were among us? And I think the twist of this one is, and it kind of goes back to the original short story, the twist of that is, what if, aliens were among us, but what if we didn't even know?
Right. Yeah. The idea with this movie, for anybody who may not have seen it, is the aliens have we don't even know how long, but they've been around for a while, and they are everywhere, and they are essentially invisible outside of people who wear these special sunglasses, and that's how they discover them. And that itself, I believe they say, is an accident. So it was not that anybody really was looking for them. This was an accident that then revealed, I mean, the general feeling is that there probably were people who felt like something was off or wrong, that something was going on, but they didn't really know what it was. And because of this accident, we've discovered, or some people have discovered, that these aliens have been inside of the world and have been slowly altering things over some long period of time.
And so in the short story, because maybe that's a place to start too, in the short story, what's the mechanism by which the lead character can see through the marketing in the trance?
Well, it was hypnotism, I believe. It was like a magic show, and the person says, "Wake up." And this one individual named George Nada, so same name as Roddy Piper's character, interestingly, which of course is Spanish for nothing or nobody, wakes up and immediately sees that, although he reacts, I think, a little bit more subtly than Roddy Piper's character does, who stares at the first alien that he sees, but George immediately goes, uh-oh, I need to cover up what I'm doing because something is very wrong here. And then it really does feel like it is the very framework, the sketch of an idea that then got blown into what They Live is. It's got all the kind of basics are there, including the ending in some ways, in many ways. But then, it was then expanded on, and Carpenter figured out, okay, there's ways to put more of what I believe into this. But this is the basic foundation if you read that story, and I'll link to it because there's multiple free versions of it. I think it's either out of public domain or out of copyright, or nobody cares. But you can see all of the very, very basic skeleton of it. And then all of what They Live does is add to that and make it grander and more pointed and more direct and more political in many ways. So, basically it's such a short story. There's barely even anything to summarize with it. A guy gets woken up out of a trance, sees that there are these creatures called the Fascinators. Am I misremembering that?
The Fascinators. And I think that's a fantastic name. I love that idea that they're the Fascinators. Yeah,
it's a really interesting name for these, and so then he does basically the same thing. He goes and he starts looking for them, and he just starts murdering them. And of course, nobody else can see what he can see. As far as we know, he's the only one. Including there's a scene that feels very much like him taking the Meg Foster character hostage, except in this case it's his girlfriend. And at the very end, he does manage to reveal their presence and then dies of a heart attack that they programmed him to have.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I really love the short story, and I really enjoyed it, and I love the way it told this story, because I like the idea that there was so I didn't like the sunglasses mechanism. It felt very like 80s, like let's wear a pair of Ray-Bans and we can see. And the reason I don't like the sunglass mechanism in this movie is because then it becomes reliant on that, and then there's talk of like contact lenses or something like other ways to see him. Like I feel like it kind of holds it back a little bit. But I did really like, there was a few things though in the adaptation, that John Carpenter did that I thought were just so much more effective and so much more interesting. But one of the things, and this is kind of jumping ahead, is the way, and maybe we can talk about it when we get to the end, but the way the short story ends versus the way the movie ends, I really thought the book was just so much more fascinating and satisfying. And I'm surprised John Carpenter didn't use that ending in his movie, because I thought it was the most John Carpenter ending. Like I can imagine John Carpenter reading the short story and being like, oh, I could do this, I could do that. And then reading the end and being like, that's perfect. That's exactly what I've been trying to say with movies like Assault from Precinct 13 and some of these movies. Like, that's exactly what I've been trying to tell you. So we can kind of talk about it at the end, but I thought the short story was such fertile ground for interpretation, making it his own. And as we go along the way, there's some things that were different, and I think in some ways I was like, oh, that was a good change Carpenter made because it opened the film up. And other times I thought, oh, I guess that seems like a really important part of the original short story.
Yeah, so let's start getting into the film, and we'll start breaking down the plot itself. But we have to start, as we so often do, with the theme itself, the theme for They Live, which, of course, I have here at the ready. And this one, well, I'm sure you'll have a lot to say about this one. This is an interesting one out of his catalog, because, as a bit of a preview from my look at it, it is not only perfectly fit to the movie, but it is also one of the most cyclical. You know what? I'll save some of my ideas on it until after, because I have some thoughts on it. So let me play it here, and because this is a great one. So here we go.
Yep.
as the guest and the resident musician, I shall let you go first with your thoughts.
Okay. So, listening to this now, from our, 2023 years, it feels very of the time. Like it in a strange way, it feels like a David Lynch score in a way, like obviously very synth oriented and very late 80s, but it has sort of that vibe to it. It definitely, there's the saxophones and the kind of, I think they're synth saxophones. It is very of the time, and a lot of synth still being used. And, one of my biggest takeaways, because remember, I saw Vampires, in 98 when it came out, and I hadn't seen this film until a few months ago. And immediately when I heard it, I'm like, this is definitely a John Carpenter score. It has that, repetitive pattern. This time, instead of it being a synth doing like a bump bump, it's the actual kick drum, hitting. And then even just that kind of synth guitar sound that we hear, that's doing this repetitive low pattern. So it's very much like if you blindfolded me, or I don't know, and told me like which one of these is a John Carpenter score, I would know this one is 10 times out of 10, just for some of the things he does. But like I said, I saw Vampires before watching this movie, so I really just saw this immediately as, oh, this was the seed for what happens musically in Vampires. But there's also, and maybe I'll save it to when we get to Vampires, but there is a point in not only his filmmaking career, but more importantly in his soundtrack career, or as a composer writing music for film scores, where he leaves synths. And he's so early on known for, these wonderful themes: Assault on Precinct 13, Escape from New York, the Halloween soundtrack, all these fantastic synth soundtracks. And there's a point in his career where he says, fuck it, I'm just going to do metal, or I'm going to do this heavier guitar, more kind of rock infused sound. And that's what we'll hear when we come to Vampires, is we'll hear how this idea and this seed of an idea is sort of brought into his newer style, which uses more sort of acoustic instruments, or guitars and basses and drums, and has more of a kind of a post doom kind of soundtrack, post where all of a sudden, a lot of science fiction had this sort of edgier kind of metal, or sort of, kind of, rock influence, and less of the kind of really heavy synths and kind of outer worldly, sounds like theremins and things like that.
Yeah, it does feel like he's arrived at kind of a blending point for that type of the earlier sound, and now what he seemed to be experimenting with later. I don't know if you heard, he recently released a remix or redo, I guess, of the Assault on Precinct 13 theme, which I can't say I prefer, but it definitely does feel like where he is musically now. I think if I didn't know that original theme so well and love it, I would probably like it better. That's often, it's very common with remakes. People tend to like the original version, but I don't think it's bad. But it's definitely kind of, okay, yeah, this is what he does now in some of his more modern releases. Yeah. But it does definitely feel like it's Western influenced, like it's going in that direction. I mean, the whole movie does have that, especially in the beginning, where you're seeing Roddy Piper just wandering through all these, down areas and these industrial places, and he's just kind of appears to be, I mean, as far as we know, he has no home, nobody, even though he's wearing a wedding ring through the whole movie. I don't know if that was just because Roddy Piper wouldn't take it off, or if that's supposed to be backstory. I don't know. It doesn't matter either way, but it's kind of one of those things where you go, was that on purpose, or was that because Roddy Piper said, I'll punch you in the face if you try to take this ring off my finger? And they went, okay,
I wonder if
no
he
problem.
wrestled. I wonder if he didn't even take it off to wrestle. So I figured if he's not going to take it off to wrestle, would he take it off for a movie? So
that's a very good question. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't look. That would have been interesting to look at. So, so yes, we get this this wonderful theme that you will hear multiple times throughout the movie. I think there's other incidental music, but it's mostly this, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it does a good job of in a very late 80s way, it kind of sums up the idea of a drifter, and I think that's a lot of the movie is that there's this sort of drifter. You've got sort of the fake harmonica, which, anytime you think of like a hobo or something like that, I feel like harmonica is wrapped into that. So I think the thing that makes it very timely, though, is that he chose to use a lot of these, synth patches instead of using, the real organic instruments. And that clearly, like you were saying, at some point in his film scoring, side of his creative, approach, he decides to favor more sort of organic instruments and kind of moves a little bit away from the synths, especially because he was such a, like you said, with Assault on Precinct 13, that's such a synth heavy thing. And I wonder if it was a budget thing too. I wonder if as music got easier to produce, and record organic instruments, I wonder if he wasn't so reliant on synths, I think early on, maybe because of budgetary concerns, you can't hire a whole orchestra if you're trying to keep the budget down. So I wonder if that was was not just a artistic decision, but was also a budgetary one. And, as he, approaches into the 90s and like scores like for Ghost of Mars and then of course Vampires, are very, very synthy. They come from almost, it seems, very different origins.
Yeah, I have a feeling you're right. I think it's a combination of things. I think it's basically an evolution of style and interest as a musician, which he clearly has been for all the creative life we know of him anyway. And probably a combination of, yes, early on, this was the only way he could score his own movies. He did not have the budget. Probably it may even have been that he couldn't even hire anybody that he wanted. He just didn't think anybody else could do it as well as he could for the price that he could pay. And so he just ended up doing it. Then he entered into a very long collaboration with Alan Howarth. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, including for this, because the music is credited as with Howe and Howarth. Their names are both on there. So I think it may have been that as well, where two people are kind of influencing each other and musical styles change. So, it would be at some point, I have no doubt that there will be a biography written about Carpenter, and I look forward to reading, about the many different aspects. I mean, honestly, his creative mind and what he expresses and where that comes from, I will be fascinated to read about it in a proper way one day, and I have zero doubt that will happen. Sadly, it'll probably be when he dies, which is the downside of it, but I will buy the Carpenter collection in whatever form it comes. I don't care. I'm going to pay any amount, and I will have it on a shelf. But
yeah, and I think also too, it's kind of odd because it's not like he always does the score. I think that would be a very different thing if it's like, oh no, he just believes he's the best person to do that part of the process. And even just like how in some of these films he wasn't the director or he wasn't the writer. Which I think is pretty typical of any, director in working in Hollywood. But I think it's also interesting that some of these scores, he lets other people do them or there's a budget for that or there's some type of relationship. I also think it's funny, like, especially even in The Thing, like the idea was to make a Carpenter-like score. So you almost kind of wonder, well, why didn't Carpenter just do it, himself? But maybe there's only so many hours in the day, and if he needs to focus on, especially like with The Thing, there was like location and there was a lot going on in that movie. So maybe, having to complete the score as well, would just be another thing that he had to do, and, it would mess up production times and ultimately budget.
Sure. He could also just be a very honest assessor of his own talent and when it works and when it doesn't. He may know, okay, that's what I mean about early on, rather than spend the budget on somebody, if he knew he could do it and accomplish what he needed, he did it. And then later on, if he went, well, I know what I want out of here, but I can't quite write it the way I'm hearing it in my mind. So I know who sounds the way I want it to sound. That would make a lot of sense to me. And that would actually, that's a rare quality when somebody has a good self-assessment of where their limits are. I mean, that's not everybody has it. Let's put it like that. So
well, anybody that can make a movie like They Live on a $3 million budget and a gross $13 million clearly knows what you need to pay for and what you don't need to pay for when it comes to producing and creating a film, right? He knows what corners to cut and which ones not to.
another interesting little thing, and I don't remember what year because we were talking about the short story. There's a very similar story that was written that Lando and I have referenced many times on our show called The 10 O'Clock People by Stephen King. And it's a very similar type of story. The interesting bit being that the reason that people can detect the creatures in that movie, or sorry, in that story, is because they smoke cigarettes just enough that they can't quit, but not so much that they're heavy smokers. So it almost, and in that, there are these bat-like creatures, and a lot of people have pointed to the similarities to 8 o'clock in the morning. And of course they live, as the follow-up to that. So I don't know that there's anything there, but I would love to think that Stephen King decided to do a much more horror-infused version and did the cigarette thing to reference Carpenter.
I think it's just like, well, there's even the Ray Bradbury story called The Pedestrian, where it's a little bit different, but in that one, the idea is, he's out walking on the street and people are like, what are you doing out of your home? Why aren't you sitting at home watching TV? Why are you out walking at night? And it becomes like this like criminal act to, not be sitting and watching I think in that story, it's like some version of American Idol where it's like, everybody watches it at the same time. So I think in science fiction and, even you were mentioning the Twilight Zone. I mean, there's many episodes that are reminiscent of this where, it's kind of about, interlopers. It's about these aliens that maybe are running things, or this conspiracy that aliens are sort of running it, or this shadow group is influencing us, or, there's somehow a subliminal message. And one of the things I really think that's beautiful about They Live, and it's kind of where the story starts, is that, we begin the story from the viewpoint of those people in our society, or in this society in 1988, that have very little, and if anything, and are unemployed, are living in sort of this kind of open air community of basically the least fortunate in LA. And I think that like you said, this feels like a very real film, and I think that's a great place to sort of ground this. And I also think it's such a John Carpenter thing with his messaging and his cynicism, but also his always looking at sort of race and class in his films. And I think, that's where this one starts. And so it feels a little bit more grounded than any of those stories we've just mentioned. I feel like all of them feel like they're in this alternate universe that, some things have changed, or there has been a big event, like even in V, like kind of this unbelievable event has happened, where here it's just poor people and homeless people living in Los Angeles, which they did in the 80s and they did before, and today they still do. So it's something that was like very, very tangible and very relevant even today in 2023.
Yeah, one of my notes here is no empathy at the government office or anywhere else for the poor in general, which is, again, a very common, as you said, it's a very common Carpenter theme that he returns to. And we get a long series of sequences where we see the Roddy Piper character trying to get a job. He goes to the government office to try to find work. No jobs for you, no skills, that type of thing. And where he ends up is he goes to a construction site, which has historically been a place where, sometimes they just need people, and, they would hire somebody for day work or week work or whatever. And basically the guy only says, we're going to have to join the union, which I love that, which, because again, unions are generally seen as representing workers. And so that's really the only requirement is, okay, I'll have to join the union, but they basically take him on. And this is where he meets Frank, who is played by Keith David. And that's Frank is also living in a shanty town, basically, as you said, an open air community where we notably see televisions on all the time. And that will become a very persistent theme as far as what the televisions are doing and why they're always on, even though they don't have to be on, we find out later. And so we get an early exchange, which again feels like a very Carpenter exchange, where Frank and Nada are, I just want to call him Roddy Piper. I thought I was call him Roddy Piper. I don't like the Nada name.
Let's just get Roddy if you want, or Mr. Piper.
Yeah. Frank and Roddy are having a walk and having a talk, and this is how it goes. So I'll play this.
Haven't seen him in 6 months. Steel mills were laying people off left and right. They finally went under. We gave the steel companies a break when they needed it. Know what they gave themselves? Raises. The golden rule. He who has the gold makes the rules. They close one more factory, we should take a sledge to one of their fancy fucking foreign cars.
You know, you ought to have a little more patience with life.
Yeah, well, I'm all out. The whole deal's like some kind of crazy game. They put you at the starting line, and the name of the game is make it through life. Only everyone's out for themselves and looking to do you in at the same time. Okay, man, here we are. Here we are. Now, you do what you can. But remember, I'm gonna do my best to blow your ass away. So how are you gonna make it?
I deliver a hard day's work for my money. I just want the chance. It'll come. I believe in America. I follow the rules. Everybody's got their own hard times these days.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
boy, not only what's being said, but who's saying it is so key to that scene.
Yeah. Well, I think it it sets up the, sort of American psyche, right? This idea that, hold on a second. I've got some noise in the back here. Hold on. Sorry about this.
Oh, that's fine. I don't care.
Okay. Sorry. I'll have to restart here. Sorry about that. So no, I think it's showing it. Here's the thing. This is the least science fiction moment of the entire film, because this is just a reality. I feel like in 1988 and even today, I mean, you could hear somebody saying this on the news. There's two perspectives, right? And maybe there's multiple perspectives, but two of those perspectives are you're, pretty much, no one's looking out for you. Businessmen are making business. I love the golden rule, the adaptation of the sort of religious golden rule, right? Love thy neighbor. And instead it's, those with the gold rule. So there's that perspective. And then, there's Roddy's sort of precious sort of, 1980s, born in the USA kind of, Reagan rerunning for president, sort of, if you work hard and you put your head down and you put in an honest day's work, then the American dream can be yours. And so I feel like that's not science fiction. I feel like that's why this movie is so grounded, where, we'll talk about vampires. But this movie always felt so grounded because right at the beginning, we're dealing with a reality. And it's an uncomfortable one, and it's still an argument and a conversation that we have today. And one of the things I love about Carpenter's films is a lot of times, even just at the start of Assault on Precinct 13, we see sort of this really odd scene where, you're seeing criminals just getting sort of gunned down execution style by police officers. That's what sort of starts that movie, which is also sort of a fantastical story. You see it in Escape from New York, where it's basically like we've got to get the worst member of our society to help us out when we really need it, because, our bureaucracy can't, save our president. And once again, here's two men. One has pretty much given up. One is John Carpenter. I feel like Keith David's character is definitely Frank is John Carpenter's character. Like, his business is set up to crush you as the worker, and you just, you can't get ahead, and, F it, right? And, Roddy or Nada is from the other perspective. He's like, no, I still believe, like, I'll get my chance if I just stick it out and I work hard.
Also interesting to consider the race of the two people and what they're saying as a secondary layer, because, he says, oh, you got to have some patience. And Frank's response is, I'm all out. Now you can map that past the socioeconomic thing, and you can go bigger with that. And I don't think that's accidental either. I don't think that's an accident who's cast in which roles here. and what they're saying.
I agree with that. But I also feel like
I don't think it's the focus, though. I think it's a secondary.
Where definitely I agree with you in other films, Carpenter's films, where it was important. I felt like it was the jaded guy, and I feel like, Frank's character had gone through some really rough stuff, and he mentions his family and trying to support them and needing to get back to them. And it just seems like Nada has been sort of drifting and has been adrift, but it seems like Frank has really kind of gone through the ringer, and maybe Nada's just not there yet.
Well, he's definitely not there yet, because the irony of this character saying they believe in America before some of the stuff that he's going to soon see, that line comes back to be very, very ironic later. So at the shantytown, earlier in the film, I skipped over this when I was explaining it, Roddy sees a street preacher who is talking about a they that have, that have the rich and powerful at their beck and call, and they're controlling people. And of course, I think before you get into the movie, you can write that off as, okay, we've seen a version of that all over the place. The idea of the slightly off street preacher, not anything new. So I don't know whether you really are meant to pay much attention to that at that point, or just see it as, anytime in a movie, nothing is accidental, especially in a Carpenter film. So if you've watched a lot of his movies, you probably understand, if you didn't already from the premise of the film, that is going to be significant. But when Roddy observes him, he doesn't think much of it. It doesn't seem like, he just kind of keeps going, sees him, hears him, keeps going, in this series of little vignettes of life on the road for Roddy's character. So,
and it's all reality. These are all things we've come accustomed to, not listening to the, person yelling on the side of the street. We don't even listen to them because they're crazy. They're outside of society. They're crazy. Sometimes if we listen to them a little bit, we're like, that makes some sense. But we're just so conditioned to just be like, you know what? This is just the crazy preacher. In Prince of Darkness, we had that as well. We had the revolution will not be televised. So there even in Carpenter films, there's this trope of there's going to be this, town crier who is going to be telling us the truth, but they're crazy. They don't really know what's going on, and there's the jaded part of society who's who has given up, but then there's these real patriots who are still think if they keep their head down, they keep putting in a hard day's work, maybe they'll come out on top.
Right. So after staying at the shantytown, there's a TV, as I said, is always on. There's several, but we see one, and Roddy Piper is walking by, at which point a hacker signal begins to permeate the commercial for Lee press-on nails that is playing.
That's right.
and interestingly, and I don't know if this was meant to be something more and just didn't get developed, or was supposed to tell us something, but everybody except for Roddy Piper's character starts getting headaches, but he does not appear to have any type of detrimental effect from the disruption of the signals, but others do. Now, whether that means that he just never watched that much TV, so he wasn't as programmed, or what, I don't know. I just happened to observe it on this watch. I went, that's interesting. He doesn't seem to be suffering at all, whereas the other ones are talking about getting a headache from the disruption. Right. And I will play now what they hear over the television.
Just
our impulses are being redirected. We are living in an artificially induced state of consciousness that resembles sleep.
Oh, goddamn hacker, that second time night that asshole's cut in.
The movement was begun 8 months ago by a small group of scientists who discovered, quite by accident, these signals being sent through...
It's giving me a headache.
Yeah, tell me about it. Must took the hackers months to figure out how to do this.
The poor and the underclass are growing. Racial justice and human rights are non-existent. They have created a repressive society, and we are their unwitting accomplices. Their intention to rule rests with the annihilation of consciousness. We have been lulled into a trance. They have made us indifferent to ourselves, to others, We are focused only on our own gain. We Please understand, they are safe as long as they are not discovered. That is their primary method of survival. Keep us asleep, keep us selfish, keep us sedated.
They're pulling the water out of the sand like sponges.
Blow it out your ass.
So there is the signal, or the disruption of the signal, where the rebels or the underground or whatever, I don't think they're ever actually named in any way, but the people who have realized are trying to let people know what's going on. And what you were hearing, the two individuals speaking, were two of the other people in the camp, including one person who will be a kind of recurring character played by a Carpenter regular, George Buck Flower. He does not have a named character in the script. He's just referred to as Drifter, but he's the one who basically says, yeah, blow it out your ass. And we will see him again at the end of the movie. But this is our first kind of big exposition of the fact that there are groups of people who know about this and that there is something going on. They're attempting, as you can see, to little effect probably, to get through to people. And even Roddy Piper doesn't seem to necessarily... He observes what's happening, he watches it, but he doesn't seem to be necessarily shocked or suddenly like, wait a minute, something's not right. He just kind of looks at it as something of curiosity maybe. But then he does notice, as the TV signal is being broadcast, that the street preacher who we saw earlier is in the camp and is repeating everything that's being said, which is interesting because it's almost there's all kinds of programming and it affects all different people, whether it's good programming or not.
Right. And is this madness? Are these terrorists or just this kind of fringe group? You know, we saw it in Escape from New York, where you had the Labor Party who is rebelling against the government. Are they the fanatics? Like who are the fanatics? And is it more believable that there's this fanatical group of street people, or is it more reasonable that there's some type of weird alien race on the earth controlling everything that we're doing? So this is the first instance in the movie that it actually becomes like science fiction, because I think prior to that, it's just basically like, it's tough if you're living on the streets in LA, and it's tough if you don't have any financial security.
Yeah, I also felt like, whether intentionally or not, I was very much reminded of in Dawn of the Dead. Early on, there's a person on the TV who's saying you have to kill them. You know, it almost felt like that the scientist talking is supposed to be a mold of that other character. This, the way he talks, his look, kind of the way he's just. But as you said, the interesting comparison to Escape from New York is that was a violent overthrow attempt. This is basically what seems like just the attempt to educate. There's no suggestion, go and tear down this building, go blow up the cops. There's nothing like that. It's simply, here's what's actually happening. Understand what's going on.
Right, but we see this time and time again in science fiction, but also in Carpenter films. You know, even with Donald Pleasance, in Halloween, trying to, don't underestimate Michael Myers. There's this person of science or this person of reason that is trying to tell us, don't underestimate this problem. This is a problem. I even think of like the Evil Dead movies too, is it Professor Nobi? He talks about the Necronomicon and like not to do things, right? And sure enough,
don't read the book. Hey, let's read the book.
Right. And that I feel like that is a trope, I think, in a lot of, sort of horror, science fiction, this kind of genre. And like just this idea that you have people who have researched this and know this and have studied this, and they have some real strong concerns, and whether it's youth, whether it's ignorance, or like you said, in this movie, it's programming, people just look the other way and they don't really care.
And this does echo the short story, because in the short story, George, one of the first things he does when he gets to his apartment is to disconnect the TV, and he hears that there are TVs on everywhere. And this is a recurring thing in this film as well, where the TVs are, as far as we can tell, the main conduit, even though I think maybe we're supposed to think it's obviously there's subliminal messaging everywhere, but the main thing seems to be this super antenna that is firing this message out. And so what Roddy Piper starts observing is that, okay, wait a minute, something's going on in the church that's right across the street from this open-air shanty town. And he figures out that, in fact, there's no ceremonies there, no services. He's seeing, scientific equipment. He's seeing people talking and planning. Doesn't know what it is quite yet, but that obviously there's something going on over there. And then I believe it is the next day or the next evening from when he discovers all this, suddenly the police show up. There's this big raid, which is, I think, again, a very Carpenter moment where we see the police again portrayed as shock troopers who are just beating and stomping on people all over the place. And the character who believed in America sees multiple scenes where people are being beaten by law enforcement. There's a bulldozer that comes in. Interestingly, though, does not destroy the television. Everything around the television flattened, but the TV not only unbroken, but still on. So again, lots going on in that.
And what's more Carpenter than a militarized police force coming and basically just, with bulldozers and batons and weapons just coming and basically, in a martial law type style, just sort of rounding up these people in this camp and not only destroying their homes, but just, chasing them into the hills, or in the case of this movie, they're kind of chased into vacant homes.
Yeah, even though there's no indication at any point that any of the people in the shanty town had any idea what was going on. They just happened to be nearby what was basically a resistance center, so it's understandable. But they don't bulldoze that. They just stomp on everybody else. So again, it does feel like a very Carpenter commentary on the way that people are treated when they are seen as less than. You're all like this. We're going to stomp on all of you. You're all the same. You're all basically unnecessary. So...
Well, and it's the, resistance is futile, and any derision is just met with, not discussion, not reprimand, just, okay, if you're going to be associated with anything that's going to threaten the powers that be, then we're just going to wipe that out. And, we see that at the start of Assault on Precinct 13, this idea that, that we keep hearing on the news that, it's out of control. The gang violence and the violence in LA at that time is out of control, and so they're dealing with it in an illegal way. And this felt very well. It felt like a death squad, and I think that's the analogy that, rightfully or unrightfully so, he often is attributing to police, and that's his real That's his big thing, I think, is that he's relating the police to, they're not the cowboy in the white hat. They are this force that those in power use to sort of keep everyone in line.
Yeah, it's violent suppression of any type of questioning of what's going on. I mean, that's what it feels like he's basically saying many times throughout many of his movies is the minute that you start questioning anything, you better watch out for a fist in a black glove to crack your jaw open. Sometimes with a badge behind it, and sometimes with something else behind it. But so the camp is wiped out, and Piper goes back the next day and manages to find one of the boxes that he had found in a secret hiding place, and is surprised to find that it's just got sunglasses in it. And he happens to take a pair because he doesn't happen to have sunglasses, and so he's walking along the street. Did we going to say something?
No. I feel like too they're the most 80s sunglasses I could think of.
They took Ray-Bans and they put a little piece in the middle so they couldn't be sued. That's all it is. They made him look almost like older people glasses merged with Ray-Bans. That's what it is.
right. Cataract glasses.
They look they're just short of that. They look just weird enough that you're like, oh, it's a sci-fi device. Of course it is.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're special
agree.
glasses.
The sunglasses thing is basically there's a point in the middle of the movie where it suddenly goes from grounded and very feasible and possible to, okay, we have swung way into the sci-fi realm, and this is basically it. But then I think it starts to become fun. Like that, then it's fun because then you're like, there's these fantastic things happening where I feel like everything before that, like seeing the police scene. So that's like the first 30
to 40 minutes of film is like
Yep.
you're basically just dealing with these people that have very little, and then because of just a misunderstanding or an association with some other fringe group, they're basically, their homes are being decimated and they're being dispersed. So I feel like that's like I feel like that's not fun to watch. Like, you know what I mean? So the fact that we can kind of get an out, or we can get this out where it's like, well, maybe it's not like maybe it's not really the whole way our society or our government is set up. Maybe it's because there's these strange aliens from another planet that are somehow tricking us all into doing this. And this is not our character, our human nature. It's we've been manipulated.
Yeah, I think about when the first, as you said, the first about 30 to 35 minutes of this film reminds me in a lot of ways of, and again, it's just Romero reference after Romero reference when it comes to Carpenter. There's a movie called The Amusement Park that George Romero did for a religious group. I can't remember what the name of it was, but they wanted to educate people on the fact that older people are treated pretty badly. They're forgotten. They're kind of, and if you ever see it, it is one of the most depressing movies you'll ever watch. It is truly disheartening and terrible because nothing in it, there's little, there's extremity to it, but it's nothing that doesn't actually happen. And it feels like this movie is going in that path. And then at some point somebody said, okay, we can't just have this be an hour and a half of misery. Can we? We have to do something a little bit more fun. Let's blow the concept out once we reveal what's going on. And then it takes this turn at that, 30 or 35 minute point of the film. And then of course, as many people probably have seen clips of or know this part of it, when he puts on the sunglasses, expertly, they turn it black and white, which again made me think of the Twilight Zone.
Absolutely.
And now all of the subliminal messaging of the world is revealed. And I actually found a list. This is probably not complete, but I will now read many of the messages that are contained within the real messaging of the world in black and white. So here we go. Obey, marry and reproduce, no independent thought, no thought, consume, conform, submit, stay asleep, buy, watch TV, no imagination, do not question authority, sleep, work 8 hours, sleep 8 hours, play 8 hours, honor apathy, no ideas, follow, surrender, cooperate, doubt humanity, reward indifferent, which probably should have been indifference, but who cares? And the best one of all, on the money, this is your God. And that is that is many of the things. Like I said, I don't know that that's an exhaustive list, but that's the one I found that was the most complete. And I'm going to show this to you. It will be on the video. But there was a very interesting thing I noticed at the 36 minute mark, which is where he's observing an alien putting groceries away. And look at the face of what I assume is the maid or the nanny. And that it's such I never noticed that woman before. I don't know why I never saw that facial expression on that woman, but she looks utterly broken. This person who looks like some kind of household servant for the rich alien lady. And it is, I never saw it before, but I went, wow, somebody said, we want you to look like this. Again, there are no accidents in movies. Nobody would have not noticed that was there. So that is obviously supposed to be a commentary on the fact that this is the lives that, again, this is in this particular scene that Doug and I are seeing it. You'll see it on the screen when the video's there. You see two people who look like they're probably more wealthy and a person who appears to be a household servant. And that person looks like the one who's the human looks bored, who's not the servant. And the servant looks like she's probably suffered her whole life under these people. So lots of stuff. This is obviously the center point of the whole film is when this is revealed.
And, these are the things that make the movie so grounded, because they keep just sort of pulling us back to things that we know and we've seen. And we've never quite seen it this way, with somebody with like bug eyes and no skin. But we know these things. We've seen these things and we've been witness to them. And even if we don't want to realize it. So, I mean, like you said, it gets fantastical. There's sunglasses. There's all this stuff going on. But we're witnessing things that maybe we've seen before. Or we see every day.
Well, there are definitely, even within, because I know I was looking at the magazines that were on the rack in the non-sunglass world, and there's one right there that says, "Let me teach you on TV." There's one that says something about ESP, and those are all specific choices. So it is, I do think there is a good mix where you're seeing things that are non-fantastical that you look at differently now, and the idea of, okay, all these messages on things that people impulse buy. When you go into a supermarket, magazines are just there because that's the point. They want you to impulse buy. That's why things are on end caps. That's why things are highlighted. That's why there are places that claim sales when in fact what they've done is they've marked the price up. And now because you see a sale for it, you want to buy it. Or 99 cents instead of $1 somehow works on the human psyche. Things like that.
Absolutely. And you mentioned this already too, but it's so deftly in such to great effect, it goes to black and white. And for some reason then it just feels like very, very 50s, or it just feels very old. And that almost makes me wonder like how long they have been here, or have been part of the society in this reality. Just that, it's kind of this black and white world where it's very clear. And I wanted to ask you about this, Joe. This kind of like dawned on me. I had like a shower thought about this, but, he puts the glasses on and he starts to see this subliminal messaging, and, it doesn't really talk about this in the book. So it's not like he got this idea from the short story, but did you notice everything is just kind of in a font? Like, is it Arial or like Times New Roman or something like that?
I think it's Helvetica. I think it's supposed to be like block Helvetica. That's what it looked like to me.
So it's block Helvetica, and it's just black and white. So it's black print on mostly white material. So I wanted to ask you about that. Why do you think Carpenter chose to just have it be so plain? Because I mean, it could have been in this weird alien language. There could have been so many things.
I think there's two reasons. One is a practical filmmaking one, and the other is more of a commentary. Because I'm gonna read you verbatim one of my notes right before I have that list of words. Here it is. Yeah. It is 6 words. Truth is in, quote, black and white. And I think that's the idea, is that, we often hear that. Well, the fact it's black and white. The truth is in black. Just show it to me in black and white. Meaning oftentimes, give me what's actually what I'm supposed to actually know. What is the actual truth of this? Now I think that's the thematic element. But I also think that likely, because I've seen images, and I'm going to send you one here because this will also be in the video as a comparison when he looks at this guy. This makeup is so much more terrifying in black and white than it is in color. When you see it in color, it doesn't look very scary. It looks weird, but it looks like alien makeup. When you see it in black and white, it is much more terrifying. And I think that is also part of it. I think it's also a commentary with Carpenter to say, much of what you see in marketing and advertising is glossing over what's actually going on. It's all to sell you on something. It's it's like when you watch a drug commercial and it's all happy people bouncing around and now they're living their lives and it's restored my sight. And then at the very bottom, it's could cause heart attack, death, stroke, 80 different side effects, or they read it really, really quickly so that you don't pay attention because that's the truth. And don't get me wrong, that's not to say don't take drugs, everybody. I'm not anti-medication. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is much of what we're shown, he looks at a billboard for going to the Caribbean, take a vacation, don't think, just go somewhere else, take your mind off things. And everything is geared towards just don't pay attention to what's actually going on. And of course, when you see what's going on, it's stark and it's harsh and there's no gloss to it because the ultimate goal is very simple. Just ignore what we're doing and keep doing the things that we can benefit from. That's it. So I think that's, to me, why it's in black and white. And I also think it is a very easy way to understand that, it's a visual trick as well. So that in the thing, you see that this is, again, I didn't pay attention, and I don't think there is an extended shot, but I'd be very curious if that shot of the maid, if when it's in color, if it is shown, does she have a different expression? I don't know.
Right. So are we not only seeing the suffering of the people, who are serving them, but we can also, see the subliminal messages. Right. But I think that's genius, Joe. Like what you said, like that's really spot on. And I hadn't really thought of that too, about just how horrifying things are. First of all, effects wise in black and white. But then also just how plain it is and how clear the deception is. Like when we look at it, we're like, holy shit! Like this is just like it. They're just on a giant billboard that it covers the entire sky. It basically just says like obey, and like how are we not seeing that? Like how are we not seeing that? And I think that's the cynicism. This is like the really heavy Carpenter cynicism, is that like we're almost complicit in being deceived. Like we want to be deceived, or they're not doing anything really crazy here to deceive you. It's pretty blatant. Like it wasn't, like I said, like this crazy like alien language where like we just can't decipher it, or it's in the fourth dimension so we can't understand it. It's basically they just written it very plainly there, but for some reason we just can't see it.
Well, or not so much that we can't see it, but that it aligns with what we basically want to do anyway, which is
we don't choose to see it. Yeah.
And fundamentally, most people, and not to expose my opinion of most people too clearly, but I generally believe that most people are far more selfish and greedy than they like to think that they are. It's just a human trait, is that we tend to default to what benefits me the most. And much of law and socialization and what your parents try to teach you is to resist your base urges. And so how tricky is it to get humans to behave this way? Probably not much. I would guess that, and I don't know, I don't have any, as I always say, I have no internal insight. I've never talked to John Carpenter at length about this film, so I don't know. This is pure speculation and inference on my part, and perhaps again betrays some of my psychology. But I would guess that were the aliens to be interviewed about why they did this, or what they did, they would say, well, it didn't really take that much. We just had to kind of nudge you a little bit. And so, it was basically getting you to do keep doing what you like to do anyway, but just not pay attention to why you're doing it. And so I think that's what it is. And I think that's the root of it.
We just told you what you wanted to hear.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, they always, it's the classic thing about the easiest person to lie to is yourself. And so if aliens came, and we will get a direct, and I have a clip where it's directly basically a person saying, hey, this is how it is. It's business is the term used. There's very specific terms used later, which I, of course, captured audio for because they matter. But it is basically spelled out that this is aliens acting in what is a very human way when you actually step back and look at what they're doing. Much of this is actually very familiar for anybody who looks at the way that large corporations and businesses operate, where ultimately there's a reason that the department is called Human Resources. That's a very specific set of terms. Resources is not generally a very empathetic human term. It doesn't generally refer to a person as a person. It refers to them as a counter of how we can accomplish whatever we're trying to do. So, again, I don't want to go too far into politics in a Carpenter film, because I know they're all light and airy, but, that's what it is.
But they are. It's unescapable. And like we said, it grounds this film because I think you watch it and, I think when I look at headlines today and I just think about, with social media and, the way, the FOMO and all the things that people experience as a result of being online and being, interacting in these social media programs or apps. I mean, yeah, it's hard to feel like that what he was saying in 1988 is somehow this very timely thing that is no longer true. Like sometimes when we watch science fiction, we're like, okay, well, that was a very 1960s view of like, society or, of flying cars or something like that, where I feel like a lot of this is still just kind of spot on. And, regardless of, like you said, of politics, there's just some really sort of frightening corollaries that you're seeing. He's addressing this in 1988, almost, 30 or more years ago.
Yeah, I mean, you can trace some of the ideas in here to things like when people talk about the deep state, and not that I believe in the deep state, but what I'm saying is this all comes of the same, it's a basic level of suspicion of what you're being told. And there's healthy amounts of that, and there are unhealthy amounts of that. So just so we're really clear on where I stand on it, if you're going to choose to disbelieve everything, you're going to have a rough life because that's a miserable way to live. But it is a sense of skepticism is not a bad thing as long as you can balance it properly.
And I think, like you did a great job of picking a really important clip with Frank and Nada having that discussion, as they're sort of eating at the encampment. Because I think it gave us both sides of that. It gave the guy who it doesn't believe anything, is kind of moved on, doesn't think he's going to get a handout. And then you have somebody who's still a true believer, who still believes that if he just needs to work a little bit harder and keep at it, and it'll happen. The system still works. The system still works. So I think that's kind of cool. That's a great setup of like those two, different ends of the pole. And like you said, if you sit on either side of those, one you're a doormat and the other one you're, like Charlie from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, conspiracy theory Charlie, where you're, got the bulletin board up and you're, drinking way too much coffee.
Yep. And so after delivering what is an extraordinarily heavy and deeply philosophical bunch of imagery to us, we then get a scene where ultimately Roddy Piper ends up in a bank, and we get what for many people is the classic line for the film. So it does feel like the film then immediately realizes it has to lighten up at least a little bit, or kind of go in a slightly less, oh no, this is the world direction. Yeah. And so he walks into a bank, and when people realize he's carrying a shotgun and pistols that he's taken from beating the crap out of a couple of cops, because now, of course, they know that he's onto them. He's made it too obvious. Again, a contrast to the short story where the guy immediately says, oh, I have to keep this secret because if they know, I'm screwed. In this, Roddy Piper very, very visibly keeps reacting to people and telling, alien women that they're horribly ugly and that they've got lizard faces and stuff like that. And so, of course, they start to figure out that he knows what, I think they say we've got one that can see. So this is clearly not they're not unaware that people can see through their disguises. So he ends up in a bank, and when people see him, we get this classic line delivered as only a wrestling performer can.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum.
Yeah, and then he shoots up the bank and takes a hostage, which was played by Meg Foster. And you said you had something about Meg Foster you wanted to point out, if I remember?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. So, like I said, I just saw this movie. So Meg Foster was, of course, if you want to talk about, I always want to talk about Peter Weller, but if you want to talk about Peter Weller and you want to talk about science fiction in the 80s, you have to talk about the movie Leviathan. And in Leviathan, Meg Foster plays a character who you don't see. You see her projected over a TV, but she is the sort of corporate liaison. And Leviathan, if you don't know anything about that movie, it is basically the biggest ripoff of Alien and Aliens, or Alien 2. It is the biggest ripoff of that franchise, but at the same time, Peter Weller's in it, so it's still a good time. And I
always just say aliens just add water, and that's Leviathan.
Yeah. And there's a great line at the end. Like it's kind of like Jaws at the end too. Like there's all it's 15 movies all jammed in together, and then there's Peter Weller, so you're gonna have a good time. But yeah, so in that movie, she plays the bad sort of corporate entity that's lying to the people that are in this subterranean or down in the water in the depths. It's kind of like the Abyss as well, like like a very low budget Abyss, but she is telling them one thing which is in the best interest of the corporation. So immediately seeing her on screen, I was like, oh, that's the lady that screwed over Peter Weller. So I immediately she was already at a 7 with me as far as like being like, I don't trust this lady. I don't trust her at all.
Yeah, so he takes her hostage, brings her back to her apartment, and we get a really, I love this exchange, or really what she says in this dialogue, because often in movies where somebody like Roddy Piper takes a hostage, what typically happens right away is, oh, she understands that maybe he's onto something, and she starts to soften to him, and they immediately start to kind of make the, not a Stockholm syndrome necessarily, but the truth of his belief begins to permeate this person who he has violently taken hostage and knows nothing about what's going on. And that is often how it plays, and it always feels forced and fake to me, or almost always, I should say. Yeah. Whereas this This feels like an accurate representation of what a hostage is going to react like. So I'm going to play this.
Look, things turned out a little sour for me today.
Well, you're not the only one.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. But I needed you to get away.
No. You have 2 guns. You're not sorry. You're in charge.
Look, lady, we're in trouble. The whole world's in trouble. They're all around us and we never knew it. You can only see them with these special glasses. I swear to you, we're being controlled by these things. I don't know what they are or where they came from, but we gotta stop them.
All right. I'll do whatever you want. Whenever you want. Just don't hurt me. Please.
Listen to what I'm saying to you.
Okay? You're fighting the forces of evil that none of us can see without sunglasses.
Take a look.
If you want me to look through your sunglasses, I'll look through your sunglasses. If I don't see what you see, I'm gonna see it anyway.
You have it your way, huh?
It's not my way. It's your way.
I think that is some of the best dialogue in terms of what a hostage is actually feeling compared to what we usually get. I love that exchange. I love it.
You know what the weird thing is, though? And this is the thing. This is the thing that I think it's not that it's unbelievable. I just think that the most interesting part of this is she doesn't seem to be afraid. And that was the first thing. That was the first thing that sort of caught my attention. That why is she not? She's not crying at all. She's not afraid, and she's just being very, very practical. Like, I'll do whatever you say. I'll do whatever you want. Don't hurt me. But not in a position of like, oh, please, I'll do whatever you say. Like, don't hurt me, which I think would be probably pretty common for most people. If they're, even a big burly man might just be like, hey, you've got a gun. Like, don't hurt me. Don't hurt my family. But she just seems to be, it feels like she's been kidnapped before. Like, she just knows the drill. Like, okay, like, you're in charge because you have the guns. Like, I don't respect you, but I'll do what you say.
It definitely doesn't. It has an odd quality to it, which I think is, we'll find out why later. There's a reason for it. But I also was watching her this time very carefully, and it becomes clear she keeps looking for an opening. So I think the idea is you talk very evenly. You don't necessarily feed somebody's psychosis, but you also don't resist it. So she's trying to be, I think the idea is she's just being honest with him about the fact that, I'm just going to do whatever you tell me to. I agree. It comes off weird, and I think that's intentional. And then right where I cut it, she then smashes his head with a bottle and throws him through a window, which is one of the best scenes because it's so well done. Like, it's a very specific angle. It's directly overhead when she spins and hits him with this bottle, throws him through a window. And, he falls down and gets all screwed up. And then she basically calls the cops. Or whoever. She, picks up the phone and calls. Well, she may have been calling the cops. She may have been calling her bosses. Who knows? Because
or both.
Just spoiler alert. She's not going to turn out to be a good guy in the end, or a good woman, I guess.
So here's the thing. So what you said is like staying calm and having the presence of mind to do all that. Like, I think that's the part that you knew something was up.
It could have been instructions. Here's how you handle somebody who can see us.
Right.
Don't resist what they're saying, but don't assist them either. Basically, because you have to remember, all humans are basically subjects to them. Yeah. So,
I mean, from that point on, from that scene and the way she just reacted to him, she wasn't even listening to what he was saying because she knew what she knew what he was saying. Like, it just, to me right away, I was
memorized. She knew what it was going to be.
Yeah. And I'm like, this is a bad person. And then she throws him through a window. And then I was brought into question. I'm like, Nada's kind of a big guy and he's a professional wrestler. And this woman just threw him through a window. This isn't a Lee character or some of the characters that we saw in some of the previous films, right? And I think she doesn't have soft eyes. She is, she appears to be, and she appears to be just the way she reacted. Like, how can somebody stay that calm if they're unexpectedly kidnapped? How
but
could
also,
they stay that calm?
One other secondary thing about it too that I think is we're meant to see is that Roddy Piper's character inherently keeps believing that what he thinks will happen, because he doesn't immediately see a problem here. He doesn't wonder why something's going on. And then later he's looking for her, even though this reaction would have made you run from this person, whoever they were. And yet he's looking for her and seems to have an infatuation, almost because he keeps believing the best version of things has to happen. Meaning, she must be a damsel in distress. She just doesn't get it. I'll save her. I've got to save her. It's the same way that he said, you know what? My chances will come. Don't be negative, Frank. It'll all work out. And Frank's like, what planet are you on? Yeah. So
in Carpenter fashion, no good deed is
left unpunished. Yeah, that's correct.
And so he plays with that, like that, this hero icon of, if I do the right thing, they'll see it. And you notice he gets frustrated when he's frustrated at her, not because she's being disagreeable. She's just not even considering what he's saying. She's not even taking it into consideration. And that's making him frustrated, because he's saying, this is real. This is a real thing. This is true. Why aren't you even listening to me?
Yeah. After getting thrown through the window, Roddy Piper goes back and manages to find a set of sunglasses just before a garbage truck basically almost kills him, and then goes to the work site, finds Frank. And now at this point, it's been broadcasted that he's a murderer, that he's killed cops, that he's on the run. So Frank immediately is just like, get lost. I want nothing to do with you. You're a murderer. I can't lose this job. Like, he's immediately like, just get away from me. And then later he finds him in an alleyway. And then we get what most other people know this movie for, which is a ridiculously extended and utterly unnecessary fight that just, I mean, it does become parody pretty quickly. There's a point where, as many people point out, you think it's finally over with, and then it just starts up again, all to try to get Frank to put on glasses. And then it's just, it almost,
I was like, we could have cut like 10 minutes off the runtime of this movie by just like having there be a little struggle and the glasses go on there.
Well, not to mention, any reasonable person, even if I think you're a murderer and you're acting like reasonable, and you say, do me a favor. Just do me this one favor. Just put these on. I'll put them on the ground. I'll walk back. Just put them on and look around. This was not necessary, man. This was really just not the way to go about getting the guy to put the sunglasses. To beat him to submission where he's so weak he can't resist you shoving glasses on his face. I just don't know that Roddy Piper's character had the necessary social skills to hold down a normal job after a while. So maybe he was never going to get work, because this is not how you resolve disagreements.
So two things. I feel like John Carpenter was like, here I have, a really great wrestler, right? So I've got to have a scene where I let him wrestle, and probably Roddy was like, yeah, it would be great if I could do some wrestling on screen. Like, I feel like that conversation was had in some way. Like, we got to write a part in the script where we'll show off, Roddy's talent or whatever as a wrestler. Also, I think it's absurd. It's absurd how long this like wrestling scene goes on. It's absurd. But I think, in contrast to what you were just describing about the previous hostage situation, she pretty much went along, right? I mean, she was giving the illusion she was going along, and obviously then threw him through a plate glass window. But this was a very different scenario. He's like, hell no, I'm not listening to you. I'm not respecting your authority. I don't care, your strength or, if you have a weapon. I'm not putting the sunglasses on. And I think that just says a lot about her character and his character. Could it have been like 5 minutes though instead of 10? Do we have an actual runtime on how long that fight scene was? Does it hit 10 minutes?
I can scrub to it. Let me get to where he fights him. Hold on. All right. So let's see. The fight starts at
Yeah.
Here's the garbage truck. So the actual fights. All right, the argument starts. Where does he actually throw the first punch? The first punch is thrown at. Okay, here we go. 55 minutes. All right, let me see where it ends.
Minutes.
All right, it's still going. Jeez, it's oh my God. He forces the sunglasses on him at 1 hour and it's a 6-minute fight. 101 is when he's wearing the sunglasses and he's still grabbing his shirt as if he's going to continue pummeling him. So,
and this is not like where they fight a little bit, stop and talk and fight. It's just like this like thing where you're like, okay, it's over now. And like John was probably just like, keep running it. Keep going. Just so this is all good. We could use all this.
we had to cut a scene here that's about 3 minutes more. So can we film another 3 minutes? Oh, sure. I can do that. I know how to do something like that. Yeah. I don't mind. I agree. The way that Roddy Piper decided to approach this discussion guaranteed this was going to happen. But yes, it does almost cross into, what do you call it? Mel Brooks territory. It's right on the border, especially because after all this, after this fight of silliness, they basically, Frank, of course, sees the world as it is. They find the leader of the anti-alien movement. Before that, right before that, that's what I was going on. So after, to contrast this ridiculous scene, we then get this dialogue, which is the opposite of ridiculous. So let me play this.
A long time ago, things were different, man. My old daddy took me down to the river, kicked my ass, told me about the power and the glory. I was saved. He changed when I was little. Turned me, started tearing it. So I ran away when I was 13. Tried to cut me once. Big old razor blade. Held it up against my throat. I said, Daddy, please. Just kept moving it back and forth. Like he was sawing down a little tree.
Maybe they've always been with us. Those things out there. Maybe they love it. Seeing us hate each other. Watching us kill each other off. Feeding on our own cold fucking hearts.
I got news for him. It's gonna be hell to pay. 'Cause I ain't Daddy's little boy no more.
Now, I don't necessarily love that last line from Roddy Piper, but I do think it does point to the, now at an hour something in, that finally he has, the illusion is over. Like, this is it. There is no more of, okay, I believe I can make this work. It's now, okay, it's war now. But yes, there's little boy that's just dun.
Yeah, right. And it's the cynicism too. The absolute cynicism that even the guy that's telling you, if you keep your head down and you work hard, like, I believe in that. I believe in the American dream. Like, even that person is lying to you. They don't even really believe it. And he kind of reveals that there, that he's like, I was abused as a kid, like he's just like, he's going right into it. And that's a really like soft moment between these two men that just fought each other for 6 minutes on screen time. But, so I think that going back to the fight scene and just going back to some of these things, I think throughout the movie, some of the other movies, they just have such a great balance of like comedy, these sort of like soft or real moments and, social commentary. And I feel like sometimes in this movie, especially as it kind of moves on, we're not quite sure where we are. I don't know if we're doing the comedic thing now. Like, I came here to chew bubblegum and kick ass. Are we there? Are we in a 6-minute fight scene, or are we holding up a magnifying glass to society, or even just holding up to the, kind of working this whole narrative of sort of like an innocence lost for our lead character, who maybe now he's even saying too didn't really even believe in any of the things they said earlier. So that conversation between Frank and Nada earlier in the movie, Frank believed what he believed, but that maybe Nada didn't even really believe that if he works hard and keeps his head down.
Yeah, there is a bit of a tonal whiplash that happens in this film that is different than some of the other ones. Yeah,
that is the most succinct way of saying it, Joe. That is fantastic. A+, a tonal whiplash.
Yes, that is a phrase I use in a lot of movies that I watch, especially the cheaper or lesser films. There is tonal whiplash. Where you're like, whoa, wait a minute, what movie am I in now? Yeah. But
excellent.
Yeah, it's interesting that Carpenter brings up the thing about the father being apparently religious. It's not like he'll ever come back to revisit religion and what it might do to people later in his films. But anyway, moving on. So as we go on, so this is after this, they run into the leader of the resistance, and basically he says, okay, we're having a meeting. Come to the meeting tonight, and we're going to start planning our next move, and so they go, and then we get another wonderful and very Carpenter bit of dialogue when they arrive at the meeting place for the anti-alien resistance, and that is, so we get a little bit more from our TV scientist, and a little bit about how people react when the aliens offer them some money. Here we go.
There is a signal broadcast every second of every day through our television sets. Even when the set is turned off, the brain receives the input and programs it.
You have any trouble getting here?
No, we made it fine.
Good. Well, the city's crawling with cops looking for us. And most of the cops are human. They've been told that we're commies trying to bring down the government. And some of them are being recruited. Creatures are trading wealth, power.
You mean people are joining up with them?
Most of us just sell out right away. Then all of a sudden we get promoted. Our bank accounts get bigger. We start buying new houses, cars. Perfect, isn't it? We'll do anything to be rich.
Look around the environment we live in. Carbon dioxide, fluorocarbons, and methane have increased since 1958. Earth is being acclimatized. They are turning our atmosphere into their atmosphere.
What do these things want, and why are they here?
It's in their best interests. They're free enterprisers. The Earth is just another developing planet. Their third world.
We are like a natural resource to them. Deplete the planet, move on to another. They want benign indifference. They want us drugged. We could be pets. We could be food. But all we really are is livestock.
Yes. I don't know that there's even much to say because it's all right there.
There. Yeah, it is. It's like all right there. And I think in other movies it's a little more subtle sometimes, but yes, within that sort of minute or so of both foreground dialogue and background exposition, there it is. So if you were curious as what the plot of the and what their intentions were, it's all right there for you at about, what is that, maybe a minute or an hour,
minute 25. It's about that scene. Yeah, that's pretty late in the film. That is right about an hour and 30 minutes or so. Yeah. And by the way, to answer to maybe address the tonal whiplash thing, perhaps this is one of those films where Carpenter said, okay, I have certain scenes I really care about, and I'm going to get this dialogue delivered. And everything in between, we can be a little bit looser on. So if we want to have a 6-minute fight, that's fine, as long as I make sure that these particular words are said in this particular order. Because again, there is no accident in the words being used. We're their third world. They're free enterprisers. They're using the planet up and they'll move on, which we then actually see their interplanetary network. It gets more and more way out there science fiction. Even up to this point, it's somewhat lightweight science fiction. We see a little bit, a little monitoring device, but that could be a drone today, so that's not even that ridiculous. We don't see laser guns. We see them talking into watches, which, hey, Dick Tracy had a two-way watch, so that's not even new. But then there's a shootout after, and the hideout is raided, a bunch of people get killed, and they manage to escape by using a teleporting watch that beams them into the, alien stronghold. It ends up being the basement of the TV station, as it turns out. But then we really start getting this is 1950s science fiction. We see a teleportation device that beams people Stargate style out into the universe. And we also get a return of a character from earlier in the film, Drifter, played by Buck Flowers, who we now find out has taken the cash, as was just alluded to in the previous clip, and is giving the boys, as he keeps calling, boys, 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 over and over and over. And it's so interesting because even his way of speaking is in a tux, in a suit. He's calling them boys. He's now condescending towards them because they're still dressed like normal people. His entire demeanor now, he's no longer one of the poor people. So now he can talk like he's ruled society from old money, from olden times. I've been running things around here. So come on, boys, I'll show you, the run of the place, which I have the run of because I'm one of them now. And it ends up where they are taken into a TV control room where they see where the signal is originating from, or that this is the building where it is. And then Drifter proceeds to lay out how it is in his particular view of the world.
Watch the door. Soundproof. Where's that signal?
It's up on the roof, I think.
Holly works in there. If she made it, maybe we can find her. Then we can go to the roof and break that signal.
Wait, boys, wait. You're making a big mistake.
You made the mistake.
No, you gotta listen to me. I thought you boys understood. It's business. That's all it is. You still don't get it, do you, boys? There ain't no countries anymore. No more good guys. They're running the whole show. They own everything, the whole goddamn planet. They can do whatever they want. What's wrong with having it good for a change? Now, they're gonna let us have it good if we just help them. They're gonna leave us alone. Let us make some money. You can have a little taste of that good life, too. Now, I know you want it. Hell, everybody does.
You do it to your own kind.
What's the threat? We all sell out every day. Might as well be on the winning team.
Again, is there really any commentary to be made? It's all right there. I mean, it's
all right there. And I think this is when it becomes kind of really heavy-handed. But I love that idea that like the kind of almost we thought maybe had a screw loose, kind of homeless wanderer, drifter, part of the encampment. Here he is now dressed to the nines and just sort of benefiting it. He took the bribe, he took the money. And I always thought that was a really great device that, you have a character early on who's just like, I think he like sleeps in a reclining chair out in the rain in front of a TV in a park somewhere. And now he's, kind of a big wig at this for this alien group. I thought that was a good contrast. And it once again, I think it's Carpenter messing with us a little bit. Like, what are the compromises you make every day? I think he's like kind of attacking us as an audience a little bit. His cynicism has extended to even attacking us and being like, well, what compromises have you made in your daily life? You're part of the problem. And even just revealing how easy it is to see these subliminal messages, like how clear and in black and white, like you said, they are. I think this is him once again, like poking at us, like making us kind of be like, yeah, so, you bought that new car, you did this and that. And was that really something you needed? And what compromise did you make to buy that?
Yeah, and I do like that when in the earlier scene where they were talking to the resistance leader, he says most of us just sell out. He doesn't say most of them. It's an acknowledgement that he's aware that, honestly, it could be anybody. And, whether this was as intentional as I think it is or not, when Buck Flowers is saying his lines about selling out, he is facing the audience. We do not see either Roddy Piper or Keith David when he is saying most of these things. He is facing what would have been the audience in the movie theater. So I do think it is intentional, and it is meant to say, yeah, what if somebody came up to you and said, I mean, they've done versions of this, of course, since then. There was the whole that was that the box, the one where the woman was offered you can have anything you want if you're willing to kill one person. Right. You just don't know who it is, and so there's variations. This is not a particularly new angle. What is it? The Maple Street episode of Twilight Zone, where all you have to do is interrupt them a little bit and they'll turn on each other. It's all that type of thing. It's the classic human criticism. So yes, it is probably more direct than it needs to be, but I don't think this movie is about John Carpenter being subtle.
No, and I think that's part of the camp, because I think he's also playing on the like Twilight Zone and 1950s and 60s kind of, sci-fi kind of, campy, really over the top, over delivered, overacted. But I think, like you said, I think the tonality of it, or the tonal whiplash, kind of comes and goes in this movie. Because even before this scene, there's the beautiful scene where there's all the rich people in this like beautiful banquet, below the TV station. And so it's like there's this, like, within the sub-society of aliens, there's also a sub-society of humans that are the benefactors of or the lichens of, or the familiars, excuse me, not lichens. I'm mixing my my werewolf and vampire metaphors here, but these familiars that are, just, they're a subset within the subset of people who are taking advantage of the human race.
And it also is, and I didn't clip it because, otherwise it'd be 40 minutes of clips, but they're
Right.
talking about how well they're doing against, eliminating terrorists. We've wiped out most of the terrorists. Hooray. And everybody's clapping. And of course, you could see this type of thing in real life when they're talking about real terrorism. And it's a direct mirroring. So yes, there's a lot going on in this movie. At times, perhaps things that aren't necessarily going along together in their scenes, but that's okay.
Right.
And so basically after this, we're nearly at the end where they basically get to the roof and Holly is revealed, no surprise, to be a traitor.
Yeah. Poor Keith David. I mean, he does such a great job throughout the whole movie, and then he basically just gets shot in the face. I was like, dude, and he lived all the way through the thing, right? He made it to maybe he made it to the end.
No, he made it all the way through the thing.
Well,
what happened after the credits rolled, we don't know.
But maybe that wasn't him. Maybe that was the thing. But anyways,
Sure.
But either way, he made it all the way through that one. And here you are. It just felt like they needed to get rid of his character. And so, he dies unceremoniously in a stairwell. So poor Keith David.
She puts the gun to his head. The scene cuts, which of course we knew was coming. And then on the roof, basically Roddy Piper says, "Oh, okay, I'm going to destroy the transmitter." Holly shows up, pulls a gun on him. And then she shoots him. Oh, no, I'm sorry. The police shoot him. He shoots her, and he is able to destroy the transmitter. So the transmitter blows up. As he is dying, he gives the middle finger, I guess, to the transmitter and the aliens throughout it.
Yes.
And then we get the final scene, speaking of tonal whiplash, where we see the only nudity, I believe, in the whole film, where a woman is having sex with an alien and looks down, and he's got the alien face because the signal's been broken. He says, "What's wrong, baby?" And then it cuts to the credits.
I think you see one scene where there's a guy in a bar, like one of they are in a bar, and everyone's like, "Who's this guy?" We've been sitting next to having a drink. Yeah. But it turns into this like weird film, and then all of a sudden, there's boobs out of nowhere, and then I was like, we made it through almost 90 minutes, and there was no nudity, and then here you go.
At the very
and then
end.
it's over. But I really liked that ending. Not the boobs, but I liked the idea that we were revealing that he revealed, that people started to wake up and see, but he also did it in a very kind of campy and sort of kind of silly way. And I think that just like put more cynicism, more snark on top of it as well. He could have just shown, like, it could have been so lame and just been like, there's a crowd of people in a mall, and there's half the people in the mall are they, and the other are just humans, and they see the other people and are horrified or whatever. But instead, he's like, no, let's do a sex scene. Let's have the reveal happen while two people are having intercourse. And I think that just then it just at the end, it just leaves a smile on your face. You're just kind of like, this movie was ridiculous, and I had a great time.
It is a remarkable film because, like I said, the clips mostly that I pulled are very, very pointed criticisms. They're very direct, kind of Carpenter classic messaging. Some of the stuff that's being said in here is very, very incendiary in many ways. And then you end with a woman having sex with an alien, and he's saying, "What's wrong, baby?" And the movie cuts the credits. So it's like, okay. Yeah, it's...
And I'll just go back and say, I think science fiction, one of the reasons why it's so great when it's well done is because you can say the most poignant sort of subversive things, and because it's involving little green men or like a far off planet or some other situation, you can get away with saying quite a bit without really sort of offending anyone, or this would be stuff that if you tweeted this on Twitter or X or whatever the hell it's called now, if you did those things, you would probably either start to gain a lot of followers or lose many. You would definitely see a polarization.
Yeah, if you put a picture of a dollar bill that says "This is your God," you would gain 50% followers and lose 50% followers who would send death threats.
Right. Yeah. And so, but if you did it in the context of a short story or a poem or even a science fiction film like this, people would call you a genius.
Right. So, yeah, They Live, not necessarily Carpenter's tightest film. I think we've would
you gotta
agree on that.
See, you gotta see it. And
but still,
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
some of his most direct kind of "this is the way I see the world" and what's wrong with it in many cases, and not inconsistent with his opinions throughout, all the way back from Assault. The idea of the underclass and that there is racial disparity. I mean, he uses words now, and this is the hysterical part of it, or maybe sad part of it. There are words in this movie that would immediately get them, as you said on Twitter, racial justice. Is John Carpenter anti-business? Is he an anti-business? But well, yeah, he is, I think. It's like, gee, you think? Yeah, but this.
But he's doing these low-budget B movies, and they're like science fiction stuff, so no one's really paying attention.
But as you said, it made money, so it does tell you that there was a time where this stuff was obviously more tolerated, or that the vitriol around being able to have messaging like this was, and maybe it is a lack of social media. I mean, that's a whole separate 4-hour conversation, but it is interesting that if this movie were to be released today like this, I can already tell you what the reactions from certain portions of society would be, and they would certainly not be kind or understanding or willing to even debate what the meaning is. And I wonder if this should involve some self-reflection on the part of people in this country. No, it would be, John Carpenter, socialist nightmarescape.
Right. Yeah. It would be a condemnation of either the director or anybody else who is involved in the production, either for or against. You know what I mean? Like he'd either be a Nazi or he'd be a lefty or socialist, and it would. There would be really strong takes on it, where you're right. Maybe in 1988, people went to see this movie and say, wow, it's kind of subversive, but this is kind of interesting. This is, this makes me think about, buying that car or taking that promotion or working hard for that promotion. I'm trying to think of the moviegoer of the late 80s, like who were they? And, it was probably these people who were, affluent and wealthy and were able to see movies. But I mean, there was people from all walks of life probably being able to go in and, to pay. What were movies back then? Were they about like $3? Was it like $3.25 back then?
$5 tops. Nothing.
Maybe $5, tops. Yeah. And and it, just like you said, everyone was just probably more open to having a discussion about it, or maybe just no one took it that seriously because it was.
Well, there's that.
Because it was a movie.
But I I think Carpenter does a good job of having criticism that can be applied on two sides of at least the American ideological spectrum. On the one hand, there's an anti-government message, no doubt about it. I mean, you can't not see that. And on the other, there is what would essentially be a communist message. The guy even says they call us commies. Well, they're living in essentially communal living. Yeah. And the ultimate message of the movie really is humanism. To help your fellow person, which certainly, depending on how you interpret capitalism, may not be necessarily the way it goes. So that's, again, this, you can see what you want in these movies, but the reality is I think Carpenter is firing bombs in many directions. So that's why I think his movies last.
So did you need a 6-minute fight scene? I think so, because I think this would all just get really heavy and really academic if Roddy Piper and Keith David weren't.
I think the 6-minute alleyway dirt brawl probably was better before the long story about a religious man trying to cut his own son's throat and beating him. Yeah, it probably was better before than after. I don't know that it would have made sense after that, but so. Well, I think that sums up They Live pretty well, as we've been talking about it now for nearly 2 hours. 2 hours, 2 hours. So we will bring this portion to a class. Hey, good movies. You can talk about them for a long time. That's the mark. If I only talk about a movie for 5 minutes, didn't leave much of a mark. So, this was the 6-minute brawl of movie reviews. So we have come full circle. So one last reminder, Music for Billionaires is either already out or can be pre-ordered. So whatever the date is when this comes out, because I can't do calendars very well. But either way, get it, whether it's ahead of time or already being out. So a reminder of that. And we'll be back, and we will talk about 1998's Vampires, a movie that there's also much to say about in very different ways. Doug, thanks for doing this. We'll be back after... I don't know what the intermission for this one will be. I've had 2 different ones. I don't know what it's going to be for this one. Maybe it'll be a cigarette commercial, because why not? Or something. So
smoke them if you got them.
Now, brilliant nail colors for today's new fashions. Leave press-on nails in 18 deep, rich, dimensional colors. Cotton candy.
Sample.
Opal mist.
Mysterious.
Leave press-on nails. 18 great nail colors you just press on with undreamed-of ease. Desert mold.
Lovely.
Fiesta.
Lively.
Sugar plum.
Luscious.
40 Lee adhesive tabs and 20 Lee press-on nails for a perfect fit. Lee press-on nails. 18 sensational fashion colors. Press on.
Well, now that I've got these press-on nails, sort of, God, they're sticking to everything. Anyway, whatever. I don't get the appeal. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm glad this fad died out because, God, so much glue. Yeah. Anyway, I am back with Dr. Doug Bielmeyer, whose album Music for Billionaires either has or is about to come out. You can pre-order or order it from the address on your screen. If you're not there, you can follow the link in the show notes. That will take you there as well.
And I wrote and performed the whole album while wearing Lee press-on nails. So that's a little shout out to our sponsor, Lee press-on nails. Are they even in business? Are they still in business?
I just thought that. Like, are they still around?
We're going to get a letter from their lawyers. We're going to get a letter from their lawyers being.
Do you want to hear something funny? You want to hear something funny? Because normally, you sit there and go, nobody bothers and listens to us, right?
Right.
However, we did a show where we mentioned the silicon Sugru. You ever hear that Sugru stuff? It's basically fast acting silicon glue. It's been around for a while. It's like a German or Swedish thing.
Epoxy or something like that.
Yeah. Basically, you take it out and it can seal things. And it's actually really useful. Lando loves it. He loves it. He's used it for years. And we were talking about it, and we thought that they went out of business because they had been sold. So we thought maybe that they weren't, because he had read that they weren't doing that well. And so when they got sold, we went, they must be out of business because, we couldn't find their website. Yeah. We posted, because I put hashtag when Twitter still was Twitter and wasn't a roaring dumpster fire. And so I put Sugru in there, not thinking anything about it. And we get an email from their marketing, like their rep. And she's like, she says, no, we're still around and we're glad you like our stuff. Can we send you some free Sugru? And I'm like, yeah, yes, sure. Please. Send me free. Please. Yeah. And I mentioned it and I said, this is great marketing because not only are they still around, but they sent us, we're nobody. We have no, I'm not Howard Stern, right? I'm not going to swing them $2 million or nothing like that. So I was like, this is amazing.
But here's the real question. Do you really want a free or lifetime supply of Lee press-on nails? Like, are you, first of all, are you interested in that, and also do you have the facilities to store that type of thing and maintain a large collection of Lee press-on nails? I mean, you don't have to answer that question. Here's what I'm going to tell you. But,
I'm going to answer that question. Here's what it is.
Okay.
Right? It's a 2-part answer. One, if somehow somebody from that company is listening, I will be impressed right off the bat. Let's start right there.
Right.
Now, if they want to send me a lifetime supply, okay, I will make sure that the people who want that stuff get it. I'll sell it cheap. Yeah. And I'll be a reseller. That's fine. I have no problem with that because, like I said, on the 1 in 2 million chance that somebody from that company, because it does appear Amazon's still selling it. I don't know. It's tough to tell whether it's a real company or a knockoff or whatever. Because they're also right next to Uranian coffin press-on nails, long black fake fingernails with designs. So. If Lee press-on, I'm telling you, Amazon has become like the dark web at times.
Kids, please stay off the internet. Kids,
yes,
please stay off the internet.
Don't ever turn your modem off. When their 50K baud modem, turn it on.
Yes.
Just don't bother, because you're going to type your parents' phone line anyway. So don't use the internet.
Right.
But if somebody's listening, you want to send me some press-on nails, I'll even take a picture wearing them. What the hell do I care?
Why not?
It's 2023. Nobody cares anymore. I'll wear fake nails.
Yeah.
I'll end up poking my eye out, but I'll wear them.
Yeah. I love how though it sounded like you got into like a low level like marketing scheme where like you're like a Mary Kay representative and you'll be distributing these Lee press-on nails for the Lee press-on nails company. I feel like you got yourself into a supplement your income there.
Like most things in life, I'll jump on the hipster trend a decade after it's already failed. So I'll be ironically selling Lee press-on nails, thinking there's an audience when those people look at me like I'm an alien. So whatever. Sure, send me some nails. Not literal nails, although I would probably use those. But send me the Lee press-on nails, and I'll be happy to say, thanks for my Lee press-on nails, if you still exist, company, which I doubt you do. Speaking of long nails, we're going to talk about some vampires now. There's a segue. Yeah, because I don't know how else we're getting from one to the other. So now we're going. Yes,
we got to a point where you were requesting your audience to send you nails or a company to. So yeah, we went there.
Once I realized I got to a point where they might start sending me bags of nails or nail bombs, I'm like, we have to get away from this as quickly as possible. So
move away.
But Valak does have long black nails, therefore it does fit the theme. So. Mm-hmm. Speaking of Valak, we're going to be talking about what I'm going to title John Carpenter's Vampires, the final film, for better or worse, of our 6-film John Carpenter retrospective. This one from 1998. And I want to, I looked something up because I was curious, because this is a movie that is 10 years from They Live. There's a decade separation here.
Yep.
And They Live, I think, as we talked about, it may not be necessarily the most evenly paced Carpenter film, but in its moments of commentary and philosophy, it hits extremely hard, which is one of Carpenter's strengths, is he does not subtly express his opinion in a number of his movies. And then there's Vampires, which came a decade later. And it reminded me of the fact that George Carlin, one of my favorite comedians of all time, did a special in 2006 called Life is Worth Losing. Now, there isn't a bad George Carlin special that I've ever seen. So let's start right there. His material, even at its worst, is still ahead of most other people who have ever done comedy in life.
Absolutely.
But that special is rough because it's very dark and at times mean. So I don't like to watch it very often, but I still watch it because there are still elements of it that I think are worth seeing. So I thought, well, what was 10 years before that special? And the special that was a decade before exactly was Back in Town, which is one of my favorites of his, one of his HBO specials, which is one of his best ones. And so I thought, there is parallels that exist in art of all kinds, because They Live and Vampires have a 10-year separation. And I feel about the movies in a similar way. One is an excellent commentary on many things, and the other one is mean, but I still occasionally will indulge in it. But at times it comes off as very, very juvenile and mean.
Yeah.
And that's my intro to Vampires. So there you go.
Yeah, mean, and let's dissect that word. So mean, so sometimes it's racist, sometimes it's the characters are being racist, sometimes there's lots of misogyny, there's abuse, there's drugs, alcohol, and like we talk about, the term toxic masculinity. I feel like this is the if you want to point to toxic masculinity, this film just really thrives on it. If a film can, it puts the, just from the onset, it sort of puts the flag in the ground and just pushes forward. And like I said, or we've talked about this a little bit, your opinions have changed on this movie, and mine's changed almost 3 times on this movie from when I first saw it to, like I said, watching it every few years. I feel like it's kind of like a guilty pleasure movie. It can be entertaining, it can be fun, but like you said, it's kind of dark and problematic, maybe is a great way to describe it.
Yes, and James Woods being the lead actor has over time certainly more and more befit the film. I'll say that. Yikes is the only word you can come up with where that individual is currently operating within the human biosphere. But Yeah, this is another adaptation, like They Live. Although this one, I have not read this book. I don't actually even know if it's supposed to be a good book or not. I'm curious. Let's take a look. I'm actually legitimately curious if this book is well regarded or not. I don't know if it is. Vampires. What's the dollar sign? Is that the 5? There we go.
Yeah, it's vampires with the S
with a
being
dollar
sign.
Yeah. Yeah. So
it's by John Steakley.
Here we go. A horror novel by John Steakley. I'll pronounce it Steakley because there's a pun. Dun, 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 dun. A dark fantasy in a contemporary setting. The novel concerns a company. Oh, we already got a divergence.
Yeah.
Called Vampires with a dollar sign. Boy, that's subtle. Yeah. Which treats vampire hunting as a commercial enterprise. Secretly supported by the Roman Church. Okay. Interesting. Let's see. What are the reviews, kind or unkind? Let's go to the ultimate list. Oh, Goodreads. Goodreads is usually a good one for. All right, here. Let's do this one. Goodreads and Amazon are the same thing now, so what's the difference? Well, it's got 4.4 out of 5 for 201 ratings. Let's take a look. Pretty meh, but still better than Steakley's Armor. Well, I don't. Okay. I wish the author would continue writing. 5 stars, so I guess that's good. Okay, so generally, John's Steak, please take on. Okay, that's not a native English speaker. I don't think. I hope. Okay,
or somebody who just watched the movie. Maybe it was somebody who just watched the movie.
You know what? Based on what I'm seeing here, I will probably read this at some point just as a comparison piece. Because sometimes books come off as they're terrible and they made better movies. This sounds like it might be a decent read. So, yeah, based on a book by John Steakley or Steakley or however it's supposed to be pronounced, one of those two.
I like
probably.
Steakley going with the theme, with the vampire theme.
Yeah. So based on a book like They Live, but quite a different film than They Live, although certainly does have a very, very Carpenter-esque viewpoint. So let's start out with the numbers and the cast and do our normal kind of intro to it, if you will.
Great. So Vampires, also known as John Carpenter's Vampires, is a 1998 American neo-Western action horror film directed and scored by John Carpenter. So once again, both directed and scored. And starring James Woods, and it was adapted, like you mentioned, from the novel Vampires with a dollar sign for the S by John Steakley. So Woods stars as Jack Crow, the leader of a team of vampire hunters. After his parents were murdered by vampires, Crow was raised by the Catholic Church to become their master slayer. This reads very much like the plot to a very kind of vampire horror-esque film. Like I mentioned, it was directed by John Carpenter, and the score was by, and it says music by just John Carpenter, it's solely written by him. And the screenplay is by Don Jacoby, and we mentioned it's based on Vampires by John Steakley. It's produced by Sandy King, so there's a familiar name. And it stars the one and only James Woods, one of the Baldwins, Daniel Baldwin, Cheryl Lee, who you probably know from, oh my God, it just slipped my
Twin
mind.
Peaks.
Poor David
Lynch.
Poor David Lynch is.
No, it's Cheryl Lee. Just as a quick opener, and I'll say this multiple times, she is absolutely a magnificent actress. I mean, she's just so good, and in this, so far above everybody else in terms of what she's doing.
It's totally underutilized. Absolutely. Gary B. Kibbe is the cinematographer for this. Let's see. It was distributed by Sony Pictures. It was released on October 30th, 1998. The running time is 108 minutes, which is a little bit longer for a film by Carpenter. Usually they're a trim 90 minutes or so. Let's see. The budget was $20 million, so this was definitely a more expensive film. Granted, though, now we talked about Starman was in '84 was $24 million, and that was a bigger budget movie at that time. This is closer to the turn of the century, so $20 million was probably still a very modest budget for that time. The striking part is that the box office returns, at least domestically, were only $20.3 million. So they really didn't make any money, or basically $0.3 million or $300,000 on this film. $300,000 they made on this film, and if you remember, if you go all the way back, Assault on Precinct 13 was made for $300,000 is what they made on this film, and Assault on Precinct 13 was made for $100,000 back in 1976. So, inflation notwithstanding.
Yeah, quite stunning. And this was, I think I had read this was his most successful movie in terms of what they made back, period, if I remember. I'm looking to see. Yes, here. Oh, sorry, I had a little bit off. John Carpenter's only financially successful film of the 90s. So that's what I was remembering. So this is the only one that made money.
Or made it back.
Yeah, exactly. It didn't have a loss or was seen, seen as a success because, of course, there's a lot of monopoly money involved in these numbers, too.
Sure.
Oh, vampires. Yeah, this is the trivia on this movie is interesting because I've read that according to Carpenter, the real reason he made it is because he felt like it had a very Western feel to it. And I think that's very clear once you get to the second half specifically.
Absolutely.
The Westernness of it is everywhere. Because it's in some ways, this is a very strange Carpenter film, or maybe it is just a byproduct of the time, because one of the things I noticed right away in the beginning is that the opening shots with the credits do not at all look like a John Carpenter film to me. That the kind of helicopter shots, the long landscapes, I don't know. Okay, so you agree. They don't seem like him until we actually get to people.
Yeah, and I don't see a lot of Carpenter, the cinematography in this. And, the kind of even with They Live, so this is 10 years before that, there are Carpenter moments, even like Village of the Damned, and some of the other movies that took place, which had a very different, Village of the Damned had a very different vibe. It was trying to, recreate more of that kind of like Stephen King, small New England town. It was in NorCal, but it was trying to recreate that type of vibe. But still, there was some very sort of Carpenter moments or views, camera views, lighting, those type of things. And this one, yeah, you're right. When it comes to characters and the way people are framed, we do get some John Carpenter-esque vibe. But you're right. Tonally, this doesn't really feel very, very Carpenter-esque.
Not in its visuals, but in its theme. This is one of his greatest themes, in my opinion. This is a top tier car. I mean, this feels like he was building to this theme for a long time and finally had the way to use it. So let us indulge in this easily. Yeah, this is probably the best thing in the whole movie as far as just picking one thing. So let's listen to the I believe it's called the Slayers theme, or the Slayers. Whatever it is, it's the Vampires theme. Let's listen to it. Now, I'll just say, there are many songs that outside of this one that when I hear them and I hear a great hook, just a great instrumentation that's being done with a wonderful thing. Now, what's funny is you were about to tell me to fade the song out, and it faded off by itself. So it was actually the perfect length. I mean, it was the perfect length. And there's these songs where I hear them and I'm like, okay, let me hear that again. Just keep playing that hook. It's so good. Play it. And a lot of times, and this is probably a wise choice for many musicians, they're like, okay, too much of a good thing is too much of a good thing. We have to leave you wanting more of it. But instead, Carpenter just keeps going, which I love. He just keeps building and building. And I'm like, you know what? I'm never getting sick of it. And right at the point where I'm like, okay, it's probably reaching the end, then it just fades off. So perfect length, great song. I love this theme so much.
Yeah, and it is They Live. Like, it is somewhere from that. It's in that vein. It's in that realm. You can hear some of the ideas from the They Live soundtrack. You can hear how it's been sort of, repurposed and refashioned, in any kind of the sort of sleazy saxophone that's in the They Live soundtrack, or the harmonica. That's all disappeared, and it's just pure, just like kind of twang, kind of Western sounding, but also, that kind of driving sort of backbeat of rock, and it just ends up becoming sort of like, like bootlicker. Like this would, this would be on like the bootlicker on Soma FM, that station. I feel like it would just have that kind of twang, kind of edge to it. Yeah, it's a great theme. And like I mentioned, too, this is one of the soundtracks now that we hear at some point in the 90s. He sort of transitions away from sort of the more synth-driven parts to really this just kind of more sort of straightforward soundtrack that just incorporates drums, guitars, and bass, like you hear here.
And a wonderful Western-sounding theme, so it's clear where his kind of love lies in this movie, what he's trying to do. And I think as a video game analog, I go to Full Throttle, which has this wonderful opening cinematic and a song by a band called the Gone Jackals. And that so perfectly fits that. This so perfectly fits this. It's one of those cases where I don't know that you could have made a more perfect theme for what Carpenter wanted it to be. This has got to be, I don't know, but I would suspect if I said to him, okay, outside of the ones everybody knows you for, and the ones that are seen as your best, what are your actual favorites deep down, the top three? I have a hunch this is in there. It's just a guess, but this feels like it would be there.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of the music, the diegetic music that we hear in Dusk Till Dawn. And it reminds me of the sort of bar scene that happens sort of halfway through the movie. Talk about not tonal whiplash, just talk about a perfectly executed way to go from a sort of criminals on the run kind of road movie into just full on horror camp. And it's such a great scene in Dusk Till Dawn that divides it with that same sort of, kind of earthy guitar kind of. So I'm just thinking of like other movies of the time, that were kind of in the zeitgeist, and the soundtracks that you would hear from that. And I don't know, this is a conjecture, but I would assume Carpenter had seen, a movie like Dusk Till Dawn, and was responding to that in some way, or just had that sort of sound in his ear. But and Carpenter being someone that is always trying to straddle genres, and like we said, even in They Live, like finding the right tone at the right moment. You're right. I think this theme captures basically what this is going to be. He doesn't let up. He just really goes for this theme, and it's kind of Western. It's macho. It's kind of dirty. I can like taste the sand from the desert. And I think that gives you a good clue about what the movie's going to do, and what it's not going to waste its time doing.
Yeah, a lot of grime, a lot of dirt, a lot of type stuff. Yep, you're going to get a lot of that. This is truly a horror film. I mean, this is because we've talked about how he jumps around in genres, that type of thing. But the Master of Horror label appears here very well, because this is truly supposed to be. As much as he said he didn't want it to be a certain type of vampire film, it's a certain type of vampire film. So Yeah. So
and it's not a horror. It's not a scary horror film. I feel like it's a vampire movie. It's a vampire action movie. I feel like, and then he's saying Western, and
yeah, it's borderline exploitation. Honestly, it's a borderline exploitation film. It's just short of being one, but there are moments where you go, "Oh, okay, yeah." This is like, Well, we'll get to them. So we start off. I do like the fact that there's no backstory, no explanation, my name is Jack Crow. When I was a young boy, my family was slaughtered by vampires. And I took my oath that day, that by God or by thunder, I shall take that. There's none of that.
Yeah,
it
they
just
did a
jumps
nice way of
into,
organically working that in as we go through. But
right. The exposition doesn't come naturally later, but at least they don't start with it. I'll give it that. It just jumps straight into what essentially is a work day for a group of vampire hunters. And in my notes right off the bat, the thing that there's two really weird, again, tonal clashing type of things with just the opening. The team, I love the fact that most of the team just look like ordinary people. These look like workers who are doing a job. There's no glamour. They're not, it's not like Blade where he's got the outfit, even though I adore Blade. Don't misunderstand. It's my favorite Marvel film by far.
Yes.
But
yes.
Blade looks like he's a martial artist who never gets a drop of any scratch on his leather. So, come on. But in this, it's the opposite.
Maybe we won't talk about Blade 3 and Ryan Reynolds, but even in that film, I did bring it up, and that's a big faux pas. But even in that movie, it's like, the team, Blade's team is,
very pretty.
Dressed a certain way, and So, but we'll leave it at that. I didn't mean to upset anyone.
Well, that's okay, because I don't know of a third Blade film, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, going on.
It never happened. It
never happened. Nope. Erasure right there. Yeah, just like the Godfather 3. It's all right. So, so we get this opening, and as good and organic and grimy and real as the team looks, their weapons look like they came from Toys R Us.
Yeah.
Why are these weapons so shiny and metal? I don't. It is such a strange decision that I don't know if it's supposed to be a low grade joke, because they look worn and ragged and like they've done this a bunch of times, and their weapons look like they just got fashioned by Hot Topics, sexy vampire line for 2001. It's like, okay.
Yeah. They should have just been like, even if they just had hammers, wrenches, and stakes, like even if we just kept it to like stakes, but instead we have these like shiny plates of armor and spears and like going back to what you said too, I love how the team members, some of them are overweight, they're dirty, it just looks like maybe a shift workers that you would see at a factory or something like that, like just coming off the line, and that I think is really appealing and exciting, but maybe the props fall a little bit short of that.
Yeah, having them look like they're using toys, or they look like Nerf guns that fire darts. That's what they look like, except shiny, or like somebody spray painted them silver. And then we get this wonderful scene outside of the fact that, boy, did they want to make James Woods look like he was the toughest guy around. They keep positioning him. Here's something I don't get. If you're going to do that, why not just put him in black jeans? Why blue jeans? Make him black top to bottom. The top half of him looks like he's trying to be the toughest guy in the bar, and the bottom half looks like he's going shopping at Kmart, which is fine, but it's just a bit of a weird style decision. I don't get it.
I wonder if he was in all black, because he's a thin man, so I wonder if he was in all black, he would just kind of look too insignificant. So did they need to kind of cut him up? They talk about that where like, because it's the lighter pants, it kind of breaks him up a little bit, so he just doesn't look like this tiny little angry man in all black.
I suppose that's possible. Yeah, I guess. But in any event, we get this opening scene, and again, to contrast the weapons, the fact that they just use a Jeep with a winch to drag the vampires out into the light, that's great. That's workmanlike. That's just practical. Again, there's not some special device that our master forgeman back in his secret lair with all of his, there's no Chris Christopherson manning a lair that's doing this. It's just, let's winch them out and let them burst into flame. It's great.
But I think they had to balance that. They had to balance that these people were like professional at it, and they had a process versus like, versus it was this like magical thing, and they had these anointed weapons from like, you know, the Catholic Church. Like, I think they had to balance this idea that they do this all the time and it's kind of dirty and gritty, but they also like they have some tech because they, you know, there's like tricks of the trade. But yeah, I think they looked dumb.
Yeah, like I said, the Jeep thing was great. The way that they had you know, a process for sweeping the building. Although here was something else I thought of, because I went, okay, if I go into a building, because there's a very the scene is very tense. Again, really well done, where they're kind of in the thing and they're trying to be quiet because they don't really know what they're dealing with yet. So they go in and they're sweeping the area. But the minute that a body falls out, wouldn't you just bring a bulldozer in? Wouldn't that be, okay, forget it. Just bring the whole building down and let the sunlight in, because we know why else would a drained body be in there? Just wipe it all out.
Well, you know, maybe, you know, there's fines probably in the, what state was this happening in? Maybe there's fines for knocking buildings over. So they wanted to
was
stay
New
within the
Mexico.
local. Oh, so they wanted to stay within the New Mexico code of law that,
maybe.
Not knock a house over. I don't know. I think that's the suspension of disbelief. But
definitely.
I will agree that I think this is like the coolest part of like one of the coolest parts of the movie, and the thing that I think is most interesting. It's like, oh, wouldn't it be cool? And I think that's probably, you know, the bedrock of the book, is just this idea that what if there were a team of people who, you know, were exterminators and responsible for getting rid of vampires, and the fact that they start the movie off with like, well, here's like you said, a day at work, you know, a day on the job, like what's the process? And yeah, it's interesting. It's like you said, like, why didn't they just bulldoze the house down? But it was like, this was all just like a protocol. Like you would do, you know, just like the Orkin man would come to your house and like spray something here, or, you know, do something like that for the people who have like exterminators come. They had this whole process and way to do it.
Process. That sounds like a really good title for a podcast.
It would be. It would be. Yeah, with a colon after it too, and then more words, which makes it very hard to find on the internet. So. Oh,
yeah. Well, anyway, getting back to the movie. So yes, the opening scene is great. It really, and it does. It tells us everything we need to know. There's a priest on hand, even though I don't think anybody cares that he's blessing anything, but he's doing it anyway. But that gives us the idea that the church is involved. So again, visual storytelling. We don't need a whole thing about that. We kind of lay out that they've done this for a long time. You know, that they have a procedure that they follow, rules that I know the rules are a big part of the book. They bring them up in here, but I wouldn't have minded maybe if they somewhat laid them out for the new priest when he shows up. So we had an idea of all of them. We get like 1, 10, and 7 maybe or something.
Right.
You know, I didn't need it at the beginning as an intro. That's fine. Where he's like, and I've always followed these 10 rules for hunting vampires. Rule number 1. You know, it's like, I don't need that, but it would have been.
But I think that's authentic for like how those rules are. Like in any industry, you know, you go in and if you're an intern or apprentice or something like that, you like learn them as you go, and you never get them in order, and they're always kind of, you know, bastardized sometimes too, where they're you know, it's like, you know, never do this and never, you know, if the wheel,
no.
You know,
I want a VHS tape that explains, welcome to the team. You're now a slayer. Here's the 10 rules of operating safely at your job site. Yeah. 1, you know, that would have been.
All of that would have been hilarious, funny, interesting, and definitely in the, you know, John Carpenter canon.
Yeah, well, that would have been the Mel Brooks vampires with the $sign. His would have had the $sign.
So,
Right, so we get this opening, and they wipe out this nest, and Crow is troubled by the fact that they don't find a master. How they didn't notice that there was a freshly dug grave about 30 feet from the house, well, I guess they don't check the grounds very well, because as soon as they drive off, out of the ground comes Valak, who I did not realize until this recent watch is the bad guy from Karate Kid 3. Which is stunning to me, because he's great in Cobra Kai. He barely has anything to do in this movie. They did not utilize him as far as his acting, barely at all. I mean, it's near criminal. And Carpenter had said, I didn't want to make sexy romantic vampires. Who dressed Valak then? Who gave him that hair? I'm sorry. I mean, his scene with Cheryl Lee.
Which, Sassoon hair.
Yeah, and then his scene with Cheryl Lee. If that's not supposed to be some type of sexy thing, I don't know if it comes off that way, but that's what they're going for. I don't know if it works, but somebody was doing stuff while John Carpenter was like watching old John Wayne westerns or something in the background.
Right.
Anyway, they don't catch Valak. Valak rises and then catches up with them at a local motel, where they are having a prostitute party.
A quiet night. I was going to say a quiet night of
reflection.
reflection.
Yeah, a night of contemplation, reflection, and soul searching.
Yes.
We do get one line, which I thought was, I didn't capture the audio because it's a very loud scene, but there is one point where one of the prostitutes asks one of the team members about what they do, and he says, "Oh, we hunt vampires." Like, yeah, people don't believe they exist, whereas we know God exists, we just don't understand him. And I went, Carpenter checkbox right there. Got it. Thank you.
I was and just the whole theme of like, there's people doing something or there's a group engaged in something, and then either they're insane or everybody else is insane, right? Or they're just not aware because they don't want to know about it or they don't want to see it. Absolutely.
Exactly. So Valak shows up at the hotel and proceeds to kill everybody except for Jack Crow and Cheryl Lee, who is I assume is one of the prostitutes. We don't get it confirmed, but she's sure acting like it. And so I have a couple notes on this particular scene. One is, I said, the hotel massacre is also very well done. It's probably the other best scene right after the opening Slayer scene, which is a shame they didn't space them out a little more, but they're great scenes. And I said, very Carpenter to have a priest be forced to blow his own head off, which Valak makes the priest shoot himself with a shotgun in the head and blow his own head off, which I was like, yep, that's probably a note from Carpenter as a rewrite. Yeah, we're not just going to have him killed. We'd like him to blow his own head off. Thank you. Because I don't know enough of this theology-wise, but does that count as suicide? Since he technically pulled the trigger on himself? Because that seems almost like an insult that Carpenter's throwing in on top of the... Because Valak having him do that seems like that's what it's supposed to be. I don't know. I would be interested in anybody would interpret it that way, but that's how I look at it.
Yeah, I think I think that's the thing we're going to see throughout the film is that all the colors are turned up and the volume's all the way up. And, even just the theme, how the theme is like, we talked about all these other really beautiful themes he's created and soundtracks he's created where, they slowly build and there's this like these subtle parts to it. This is just like 3 minutes of like, bam, here's your theme. And I think the movie starts out the same way. We start out right with the action, a lot of suspension of disbelief, and then we're thrust right into like a horror party, basically, that the men are having. Like, they're not even men. They're just like, they're men that aren't even, quote unquote, what we'll say are like good, right? Like they're just like drinking and womanizing. And then they get like horribly slaughtered. And then even the clergyman is forced to, swallow a shotgun. So I think it's just like from like the first 10, 15 minutes, it's like, no. Like, this isn't going to be a James Woods movie where he's going to be nominated for an Academy Award. Like, this is going to be almost exploitation or almost a grindhouse movie. And like you said, it never quite gets there, but it gets really close. I think it's just because of the perspective and the way that it keeps sort of moving forward in sort of a kind of more Hollywood narrative. We don't quite get the full grindhouse status where it just kind of devolves into, bedlam, as often those movies will, where it's just like all of a sudden it just kind of veers away from kind of having a narrative or purpose. This one is there's always some plot kind of driving it through.
Yeah, I have a note here, which is, I'll apologize, is very graphic, but I think is accurate, where I said, this movie feels like sitting in the sand on a beach with your butthole covered in glue. Because the grime, I think, is what I was going. It's so grimy and you can't like get it out. It's just, this movie feels dirty right from the beginning.
You feel bad.
There's a coating of dirt.
You feel bad for watching it. You're like, why am I enjoying this? Like, I feel like in a way, but I think so. Like I said, like my opinion of this movie has changed over the course of listening to it, and I can kind of wrap that up when we get to like the end. But yeah, I think, my current perspective on it is that it is over the top, and a lot of this like subtle, sort of, commentary and discussion it was in the parts in They Live when it was not subtle. It's even less subtle here, and it's almost parody. It's almost satire because it is so violent and just over the top. Everything, for the way women are treated in this movie, as we'll talk about, even to just the way violence and gore is addressed, as well as just the kind of beliefs and the way the characters sort of treat one another.
Yeah, it is. And I have read nothing that indicates that Carpenter intended this as a satire or a parody, because that would then change my view. But from everything I've read, he just played this as a Western with a lot of violence in it. Well, then I can't offset it by saying, well, this is supposed to be a joke. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are obviously comedic moments and things that I think are black humor, like the priest with the shotgun, but it doesn't play like it's supposed to be, okay, I hate movies that are so action schlocky like this, and I'm just going to make one that makes fun of it. Kind of like the Planet Terror idea. That's supposed to be a satire of right? So, yeah, that's the struggle, is there are, especially the opening and the front-loaded 2 scenes are so well done, even in their excess, that then when the rest just starts to get kind of slow and mean, that it becomes tougher. Kind of how you said you struggled for a while with Halloween 3, that there was a bit where you're like, okay, where are we going with this? That's what this movie is for a lot of the middle of it, where I'm like, okay, basically, because essentially after the massacre, the only people left alive are the Baldwin brother, James Woods, and
Daniel Baldwin.
Daniel Baldwin, James Woods, and Cheryl Lee, who has been bitten by Valak in a very weird scene that I'm not even sure what the intention of it is, because again, Carpenter said they're not going to be sexy, romantic, brooding vampires, and yet he bites her in the inner thigh and then feels her up a bit before leaving. So I don't know. And then,
well, I think it's like what you said. He's not going to have these like brooding, kind of sexy vampires. He's going to have like pornographic vampires. I feel
I guess that's it. I guess it's
you know what I mean.
It's,
like
just
because you said
sex,
they wouldn't be sexy doesn't mean there wouldn't be. It was uncomfortable. That scene wasn't like sexy. It was uncomfortable because it felt like you were. I don't know. It felt like you were watching an intimate moment that you shouldn't be witness to, and it was over the top, right? Like we said, it's just over the top and like really kind of like, oh well. So the Bela Lugosi, or even just like these like what's the?
I can picture Bela Lugosi's directly being like, "Sir, this is uncouth, sir. You must have some romance before you bite them, sir."
Right. So I think that's why he was like, okay, I'm going to make the good guys gruff, right? I'm going to make the good guys really gruff and macho, and I'm going to make these vampires somewhere between being creatures, right? And just being, sexually explicit, like in between those two things.
Oh, and maybe I missed it. Maybe maybe I was misinterpreting, because I have a note here. Valak has the appearance of a Ren Fair cosplayer with the charisma of a scratching post. Weird, because the actor is great in Cobra Kai, but maybe that was intentional, I guess.
Yeah. And it's you're like, dude, like, come on, just like he could have just bit her. Like, why does it have to be there? And then why does there have to be this whole like weird connection they have? You know what I mean? And then you're like, what, so they're really on, that's where we first start to see this sort of misogyny. But I think that's what he was going for. This is over the top. This is not about subtle political commentary. This is what if we did a real raw vampire movie?
Yeah. So they escape. The 3 of them escape, and they're dragging poor Cheryl Lee, along with them. Oh. And we get an explanation as to why when they stop for a minute and get out of their Jeep. And I'll play that clip here just so we have an explanation of basically what the middle of the movie essentially is going to be. Here we go.
You alive? Come on. Come on. What are you doing? She's going with us. Oh, fuck. You just bit her, man. She hasn't turned yet. Come on. Well, she's on her way. It's under 48 hours. The telepathic link with the master won't hold. So what? After that, he's going to start receiving his thoughts, seeing what he sees. Exactly. Like a surveillance camera, so we can find him and shove a stake right up his ass. I'm going to use this piece of shit to get to the master and to whoever tipped him off. Come on, Tony, we were set up. He knew my fucking name. Come on. Come on. Who the fuck set us up? I don't know, but I want the son of a bitch.
So now
James Wood, the ultimate slumming, just like even his delivery is just so good. Like his timing is great, but it's just like, man, he is slumming it here in this movie.
Well, there's an interesting bit of trivia I read about this. I don't know if you read the same thing, that basically he and Carpenter got along very well because they had a deal. And the deal was one scene would be done by Woods as written, and the next scene he was allowed to improvise, and Carpenter liked a lot of his improvisation. Now, I dearly would wish to know which scenes were which. I really would want to know, because there are certain scenes where, again, knowing James Woods and how he is now, I'm thinking I could guess. But I'd really like to have my judgments confirmed for once, because I don't like to be one of those judge a book by the cover types. But when the cover is what appears to be a gaping asshole on the internet, then I like to know if I'm right. I apologize for language, but whatever. There's going to be a lot of it in this. So, yeah, I'd be curious. But yes, this is now the justification to debase and abuse and physically slap around and just until suddenly Daniel Baldwin falls in love, which is out of nowheresville. But I got it as a small aside, because Cheryl Lee, I know her best from the Twin Peaks series, and especially Fire Walk with Me, where she does this stunning performance of this woman who is just in such pain from so many aspects of her life.
Yeah.
And then to see her just treated like this. But my note is Cheryl Lee is constantly abused in the 90s, which is true. And part of it is because she's excellent. I mean, she really does come across as somebody who has just got like no hope at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think her character, especially the way she plays it, is, she it's tough to articulate this without like coming across as a misogynist, but the way she plays the character, there's sort of like she's accepted the life of being a prostitute, and then also there might be drugs are part of it, and so like there's like a lot of bad life choices and decision making happening, and then of course you're surrounded by these men who are they continue to treat her like a sex worker or a prostitute for the rest of the for the duration of the movie, and they never switch over to her being. They're not treating her like a person, and I think that's the thing that I think that's what's like problematic about the movie. But I think that's also what's on message with the movie, that like these guys who you would get to go and like work and kill vampires for a living. Well, these are not going to be the best of the best members of society, right? And then I think the real Carpenter twist is that, however, it's the Roman Catholic Church, or it's the church that is behind this, or is paying for this, and is so an institution that may be seen as in one light as this very positive sort of part of society. They're funding these basically like criminals to exterminate vampires, so that that the rest of the world and society doesn't have to deal with them and face them. But yeah, so I think as much as you don't like to see it, I think the fact that they continue to treat her like a prostitute throughout the movie, and especially like James Woods, but James Woods like ratchets it up to another level where it's like, I'm going to punish you for being a sex worker, not just like treat you poorly, but I'm going to actually punish you for it.
After, it should be pointed out, it's not as if she came on to him and he rebuffed her because he had some kind of secret morals. He was just about to go into the room with her. And now, because she was a prostitute and, she didn't ask to get bitten, it's not her fault. But now he's going to treat her as if she's doubly somehow dirty because, Valak, the guy who's going to kick the shit out of me later, bit you. So sad for you. Slap her in the face, Daniel Baldwin. More than once. Thanks.
Yeah, and it's nuanced whether he's treating her like that because she is pretty much a vampire now, or if it's just because of the way he treats women, which I think James Woods' character...
I'd say both.
Yeah, probably both. And then, so I think just for there to be some dynamic, we have to see, kind of Daniel Baldwin go from being just sort of like a henchman, of James Woods, and just being sort of, Jack Crow's, basically right-hand man, or the guy that does all the dirty work or the dirtier work. just to have him have sort of a narrative where he softens and, starts to care for the woman. I think it's got to go somewhere. The characters have to develop in some way, and I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with him because I can see how somebody like that would think, oh, this is okay for me to fall in love with this person that I've kept tied up naked on the bed for a while and, basically abused constantly. Yeah, that'll work out in the long run. The thing that I'm going to jump to the end for a second, is the thing that bothered me is that she didn't just split on him after she tore his throat out, that they're now together to go into, why would she stay with him? That makes no sense to me. But, this is not a movie where you're going to start nitpicking narrative holes, because
that's the thing. I think if you take any of this too seriously, even the way they're treating her, and I think if it seems really violent and it seems really sexual and you're kind of uncomfortable. But I think you have to understand, I think John Carpenter wanted us to have a good time. And I think this is how he thought we would have a good time. Have you ever gone to a party and you're there for 30 minutes and you're like, all right, it's time to go.
Yes.
You're
this is a party for a different crowd. Sorry.
Yeah. And you're like, hey, you guys are great people, whatever. Thanks for inviting me. But, me and my friend are going home.
You know what? Pouring barbecue sauce in my eye while I'm naked, wrapped in saran wrap. You know what? It's not how I spend Saturdays. But you guys have a great time. Have fun.
Yeah. And so I feel like I feel like he is trying to be I think he's trying to entertain us, and he's trying to be over the top. He's trying to really push it, but I think he wants us to have a little fun. And by the way, so 1996 Dusk Till Dawn came out, and John Carpenter had to be aware of that movie and just the sort of style of that movie. And I think this, 1998, in some way there has to be some response to that movie. And just, you think about one of my favorite roles by
George Clooney.
George Clooney, one of my favorite roles by him. I mean, there's a bunch that
Psychos
I like.
Do not explode. Oh, yeah. What a great movie.
Yeah. And, and so many, and even just that character, isn't that the Jack Crow character in a way?
That's the good version of it. That's the one where I'm with you the whole way. And
where
you never
like
get
him
creeped out
and
by him.
Yeah. You like him, you fear him, he's dangerous, but at the same time, he's charismatic. And
he doesn't like rapists, even if they're his brother.
Right.
But that's what I mean about they at least try to give him some kind of moral something.
Right. But that's Quentin Tarantino, and that's what he's going to do. And he's going to have dialogue, and he's going to set up. Quentin Tarantino, I feel like, couldn't just do a vampire movie at that point. I think he had to set it up. He had to set it up the way he would do, Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction. So he had to set it up that way. Where I think with Carpenter, he's like, hey man, I've been in the industry now, 20, 25 years. Let me just go over the top with this. And I think that's so when you see these scenes and you're like, that's a little bit questionable. I don't think he's taking it seriously. And I think he's trying to be over the top.
Well, he certainly succeeded. So following this scene, the Jack Crow is summoned to the office of the Cardinal, where we find out, which I think is a bit of a callback in some ways when, we're talking about how there's, maybe it doesn't have the same political leanings. When we're talking about who would be employed in this type of thing, we find out through this dialogue that, oh, gee whiz, the original vampire seems to have a little bit of a connection to the church. So let's play this little bit of backstory.
The whole European team is wiped out.
When?
3 days ago. Callahan's team was clearing a large nest near Cologne, Germany. Local authorities reported it as a terrorist act. We found this at the site.
Is he the one? Yes.
What is this?
Celebratum. It's medieval Latin for celebrate. Celebrate this.
Celebrate what?
Well, we don't know.
I've authenticated the portrait. It was painted in 1340. The subject's name was Valak, Jan Valak, born in Prague, 1311. He was a priest who turned against the church and led the Bohemian peasants in an uprising, actually capturing several small towns. Valak was captured. He was tried for heresy and burned at the stake. But after his death, there were reports that he was seen walking at night. It was said he killed the living to drink their blood. They opened his grave, and it was found empty. It's the first known case of vampirism.
A priest. Valak is not like the other masters we have hunted before. He's the first and most powerful. Of our slayers, you are the only one who faced Valak and survived.
Going back out. You mind if I hang on to this?
Jack, I've been in contact with Rome. The Vatican Council requests that you rebuild your team.
There isn't time.
You are to return to Monterey, recruit new team members, and try again when you are at full strength. Father Adam will accompany you and take the place of poor Father Giovanni.
I don't think so.
Jack, this is non-negotiable.
Valak is the original, the source of the disease. The first vampire created by the Catholic Church.
By accident.
Shut the fuck up.
Ah, yes. Again, the subtlety of the performance commands multiple viewings. It is it is very delicate. Right. So now we have our backstory, which is that Valak was a priest who turned against the church, and when a exorcism or whatever, I don't think they mentioned the exorcism right there, said something went wrong, and suddenly, now he's a vampire. And also, much like in They Live, when Meg Foster shows up and you immediately realize that there's something not right here, when the cardinal looks like the Cheshire Cat from a Disney film, and that he might just rip Jack's head off and eat it in front of him, I wonder who's the mole who turned him over. I mean... Could you have picked a worse guy to telegraph who was the main bad guy? I don't know, but he certainly immediately comes off as, I don't think he's going to, stick it out with the church all the way. So, again, not much subtlety.
And I think this was all meant to give us some backstory and be like, I feel like in a different Carpenter movie, this would be the where this would be the political commentary, but I think here it's so heavy-handed, and it just feels more fun than it does, an actual assessment of, one of the worst, things actually, some of the worst parts of our society actually come from religion. And so, it doesn't feel like a pointed or snarky commentary on that. It just feels like it's sort of a plot point. And to introduce us, first of all, to probably the villain, probably the real villain, and then also Father Adam, who is a very interesting character, and I think is much needed because he is the rube, he is the he is the pure, he is the believer, he is the Nada character at the start of They Live, right? He still believes in the church, and he believes in the greater good, and that they can make change, and that is clearly not Jack Crow's character at all.
No, as we're going to hear in multiple clips, he has no problem with the idea of killing a priest. But yes, I agree. If this had been done in a more Carpenter or pure Carpenter way, this would have been that Valak had found out that the church was shuffling around child molesters, tried to expose them, and they did something to him which turned him into a vampire. That would be the commentary where Carpenter basically says, well, not that he's doing good things now, but gee, why did he get this way? But instead we get the kind of more traditional, well, they screwed up an exorcism, I guess, so whoops, go kill him.
Yeah. It's more of a monster movie then, instead of the monster is actually, who's worse, Frankenstein's monster or Dr. Frankenstein, right? The nuance of that, right? And that's not here. That's not this movie. This movie is not about nuance.
No, this is a machete, not a scalpel. So that's the difference. So then we get a scene. Now, I will say, I went back and forth on this because I'm going to play the truck scene, which I've titled "Riding with Crow."
Yes,
there was a word.
By the way, this scene and the other scene, by the way, these for me are the. There's two scenes in this movie that are this sort of capstone in this movie for me, or the the attraction to me. And yes, I mean there is some difficult language and some inappropriate language, but yeah, these two scenes for me, yeah, I think they're a really great device. They're the popcorn for this movie for me, if you will. Maybe I'm just a sick bastard. I don't know.
Well, so I will say I went back and forth on whether to bleep one particular word. I normally never do, but honestly, it is such a terrible and offensive word that I said, you know what? You're going to know what he's saying. You don't need to hear it. It's just mean. Again, the meanness, I'm trying to tone down the meanness where I can. But everything around it, again, as you say, this is the Jack Crow character. This is what he's meant to be. So I will play Riding with Crow, which immediately follows the scene we just had with the Cardinal.
Who set us up? Was it you? Oh! Who set us up? Who was it? Oh! Was it you? Who set us up? I don't know what you're talking about. You don't think I'll kill you because you're a priest. You are seriously misjudging the wrong motherfucker. You want to kill me? You go ahead and kill me. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't. We'll see about that.
Where are we going? You have to tell me what's going on, Mr. Crow.
Have you ever seen a vampire?
No.
Well, first of all, they're not romantic, all right? It's not like they're a bunch of fucking hopping around in rented formal wear and seducing everybody in sight with cheesy Eurotrash accents, all right? Forget whatever you've seen in the movies. They don't turn into bats. Crosses don't work. Garlic? You want to try garlic? You stand there with garlic around your neck. One of these buggers will bend you fucking over and take a walk up your strata chocolata while he's sucking the blood out of your neck, all right? They don't sleep in coffins lined in taffeta. You want to kill one, you drive a wooden stake right through his fucking heart. Sunlight turns them into crispy critters. Got it? See this map? This map shows all the encounters in the United States as far back as the 1800s.
Never seen this.
No one has, outside the team. Look at the Southwest. See the spiral pattern?
Yeah.
If you time sequence all the encounters, you get a logarithmic pattern, ever widening. It's a search pattern, Padre. They're looking for something.
You know what it is?
I heard stories when I was young. Something about a black cross. About vampires walking in the sunlight. Padre, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
I was kicking your ass back there. Did I give you wood?
What?
Huh? You get a little mahogany from that, a little ebony? Come on, tell the truth. I'm just fucking with you, Father. Forget about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there's the use of the gay slur. But see, here's the thing, and I obviously I'm not there are movies that I've watched over the years that have the N-word in them, and not to go on a whole diatribe about this, but often when we hear those slurs in movies, it's usually a character that we're supposed to dislike, or it's supposed to be a character that we see as being sort of ignorant, bad, all these things. But I think what is difficult and tricky in this movie is, for all intents and purposes, Jack Crow is supposed to be the hero of this movie and the person that really knows what's going on. So when we hear, if you listen to that whole monologue, it starts out with him being really, really sort of guttural and sort of like, not locker room talk. I don't want to use that term, but he's definitely like, he's like salt of the earth, kind of just being really crude and really crass and racist and ignorant. And then he segues into this whole thing about how they're tracking this like algorithm and they're seeing that there's a pattern. So he's clearly like very technically trained and an expert at hunting vampires. So we see that side of him. And then he asks a priest, not just another man, but a priest, if he got an erection while he was beating him up. So I feel like that this scene for me, like that scene, like as questionable as some of the words are, it's just, it kind of encompasses that whole character and kind of what this movie is doing to us. I feel like it's beating us up, it's slurring at us, and then it's also asking us if it gave us an erection. And I think that's if you look at the movie in that way, I feel like that's what Carpenter is doing in this film.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you're right. It's such a specific character, and it's just so hard to. This is one of those rare cases where I really would love to figure out what Carpenter's actual intent with this movie was. What was the actual intent with this character? Because I don't know that we really know from the movie. I'm not convinced that I understand that what the movie is presenting is what we're supposed to think. Is there actually a joke by Carpenter on the fact that I'm presenting a character that you as the audience think is a protagonist, so I'm going to put the ugliest, worst things to him and see if you still sit there and cheer him on? Is that the idea? Or did he think that in the 90s that this was the edgiest guy he could get? I really don't know. I mean, I don't know.
You don't know yet. So you don't know. See, here's the thing, though. I feel like his films from the 70s and 80s, and even just watching, They Live 10 years before, he didn't appear to be a chauvinist or somebody who would, is racist and or, homophobic. So I feel like, and like, even just, we talk about Lee's character, not Cheryl Lee, but Lee from Assault on Precinct 13, and how progressive of a character that was for the time. And, just the way he treats women in general in movies. This goes against all his normal sort of really kind of more open-minded and sort of progressive thoughts on just not only race and gender, but then also obviously politics and capitalism. But so I think he's trying to. I think it's like you said, like, how ridiculous can this character be, and we still, we'll still root for him. I don't know if I'm ever really rooting for him, but it's kind of more of like, well, what is this guy going to do next? I also think I think something that's not happening in society as much as it did back in the late 90s and early 2000s is, I think there was this like mindset where, and I talked to my sister about this a lot, there was a mindset where it didn't matter if the person was quote unquote eccentric, right? Or a little rough around the edges or difficult to deal with. If they were the best man, and I'm saying best man for the job, because it was often, there was these difficult male figures. If they were difficult or hard to handle or hard to deal with, if they were the best person for this job or they were really good at it, then you kind of would overlook those things. And so I think that's very of the time. And so maybe an audience would look at that at the time, and consider that, where I think today now it's like, no, you have to be part of the team and you have to be respectful of people, and which is good. This is like all good. This is like progress. But I think there was a time, even as things were opening up and things were getting more progressive in the late 90s and early 2000s, there was still in every office, every place you worked, there was always that one guy where you're like, why do they like put up with his shit? And they're like, well, if you need this specific thing done, like if you need this done, he's the best person for it. And so there's part of that. I will just, and not to go on a complete monologue here, but I will talk about the first time I went to see this film. I think it was with you, and it was in the late 90s.
It was.
And at that time, we went with two women who lived in our dorm. And I think, so at the start of the movie, they were kind of laughing, right? But by halfway through the movie, they basically were, I think they were having like a side conversation because they had just given up on the ridiculousness that was this movie.
We are never going to a movie with these two
kids. Yeah, never go. Yeah, right. Again. Yeah. And where you and I were just kind of like, well, it's a vampire movie, So I think, part of the reason why, we said this didn't do tremendous in the box office. I mean, they made the money back, but they didn't make it. You know, normally they have to make, you know, twice as much or, you know, so on for it to be a huge hit. But I think that was probably part of it, is that I think some people watched it and just could not agree with James Woods' character, or Jack Crow, and other people kind of saw it. I can't believe Carpenter meant any of what he wrote. I think it was more of along the lines of what you said. How far can I push people and still be a likable character? And just you go ahead. Yeah.
No. And what may reinforce that you're correct and that is the interpretation is we immediately follow the did you get Wood scene with Cheryl Lee stripped down on a bed, which almost seems like an intentional, well, we're going to mention about her, and now I'll give you what, you know, if that's what you're here for, now you're going to get some flesh. And we get a basically fully nude, well, she's laying down, but it's full rear nudity of Cheryl Lee as Daniel Baldwin crawls on her and then explains what vampirism is and what's going to happen to her, which is, you know, again, follows immediately a scene where somebody suggests that somebody should be sexually aroused by being beaten. So, yeah, there's a lot going on in this movie. But anyway, we get this hotel scene, and Cheryl Lee attempts to kill herself or escape. I mean, she said suicide. Was it an escape thing? Hard to say. And in the process, she bites Montoya, which is Daniel Baldwin's character. And so we now know that he will eventually turn as well. He hides it, immediately bandages the arm. When James Woods shows up and sees the room, he says, I cut myself pulling her back from the window. And whether James Woods really believes him or suspects something happened, I mean, I think we're meant to think he right away thinks something happened. But regardless, the team is together now, and so they go and they're like, okay, we're gonna go and we're gonna find Valak, and then we get a scene that mirrors the earlier scene with the truck where he has a rather heated discussion with the new Padre. Let's play that.
I'm beginning to like you, so don't make me hurt you, okay? Just tell me what you know. I'll buy you a beer and get you laid. Come on. You don't tell me, I'm gonna have to start cutting on you.
No, you won't. You're a righteous man, Mr. Crow. Besides, I serve a higher master than you. Any secrets I keep are kept to protect the church and its followers. Part of your...
Open your mouth. What? Open your mouth. Give me a hand. You listen to me. Fuck! My father kept a secret once. He'd been bitten by a vampire. He kept it a secret from me and my mother. By the 5th day, he was turning. At night, he attacked my mother. And then he came after me. I killed my own father, Padre. I got no trouble killing you. Last chance. Now open your motherfucking mouth. Open your fucking mouth.
No!
You ready? What? Excuse me, what?
Valak is looking for an ancient relic, the Cross of Berzier. After his trial, the church declared Valak was possessed by demons. He was taken to a small town in the south of France called Berzier. An exorcism was performed using an ancient, forbidden form of the ceremony. It was long and very brutal. And then something went wrong. The accounts are confused, but they refer to an inverse exorcism. The body is destroyed, but the possessed soul remains. The exorcism transformed Valak into a creature whose body is dead, but who lives on.
Vampire.
A vampire. The stories you heard about the Black Cross are true. It was used in Valak's exorcism and then taken back to Rome. It's known as the Berzier Cross. The cross was then shipped to the New World. It was moved over the years from one Spanish mission to another. Its exact location was kept secret even from the Vatican. Hundreds of years it was lost. And recently, Cardinal Alba discovered the name of the only living priest who knew the location of the cross. Father Joseph Molina. Cardinal Alba and I came to the United States to find Father Molina, to reclaim the Berzier cross. That is all I know.
So now we have the setup that they did a forbidden exorcism for some reason,
Right.
and it went wrong. And so that is why the Black Cross, which was present at the ceremony, is what Valak is after, so that he can now become, a daywalker, essentially.
Yes. Which is such a theme this part feels like the horror, the monster movie part, right? Where it's like there's this conspiracy and an ancient evil and it needs to be rooted out. And, that's in between scenes of James Wood shoving a gun in somebody's mouth. Like, I feel like once we talk about like the tonal shift here and Whiplash, but I think he's messing around with kind of having it be really raw and raunchy, but then also it being sort of, this sort of in canon sort of vampire movie. And, because every vampire wants to be able to walk during the day. And like that, that feels like a plot we've seen hundreds of times.
Oh, yeah. No, very common. So now we basically, and I cut around as that dialogue is going on. We're seeing Valak and his newly risen army of masters. By the way, the word master is used for Valak, and when the priest is talking, he says, "I serve a higher master." Again, words matter, and they're not written accidentally. So we see all these scenes of a mission getting torn apart, and at the very end of his explanation, we see that Valak, in fact, has the Black Cross. So they go and they track down Valak, and they try to take out his group of masters. They have this whole sequence, which again feels very similar to the beginning, and I kind of like this part. This feels like it goes back to the beginning again, where they come up with this plan. Okay, the priest will be bait. We'll get him in an elevator. We'll come up. We'll harpoon him. We'll pull him out. The whole thing. And the problem is that it takes a little too long, and the sun now goes down before they can get to Valak. And of course, once the sun is down, Valak emerges with his remaining masters, and they beat everybody up, and they tie up Jack, the new padre, hides in a local store, and then, and I know everybody's going to be surprised at this reveal, but I wanted to capture it so that those of you who, I don't have a heart attack in shock at the reveal here, but here's the reveal of who the person who turned the team in was. Let's listen and see if you can guess who it is.
Hello, Jack. From your expression, I assume you couldn't possibly understand my presence here.
But
I'm
the audience
sorry
could.
to disillusion you, Jack. As one grows old, as death approaches, we begin to question our faith. And I've found mine lacking. Is there a God? Is there a heaven? I can no longer answer this for certain. I've witnessed no miracles, had no visions, and the prospect of death terrifies me. I realized I have only one alternative, and I made a bargain with the devil, if you wish.
You are truly a pile of dog shit, Cardinal.
Yeah, that's right. That's correct, Jack. And I can live with that. After I've given Valak what he wants, he will fulfill our bargain. And I will be transformed into one of his new children. It's beautiful, isn't it? Eternal life. Immortality. Can change your heart.
Now, this scene done in a different movie by a more subtle actor, I think would be much better. I like this. I like this explanation. I actually think this is perfectly reasonable that somebody who devoted their life to something and never felt like there was anything on the other end of the devotion, that's going to drive some people away. There is, the doubt and of faith can make people do terrible things. Problem is, it's delivered by somebody who seems like he's basically, one step away from twirling a mustache. So it kind of defangs it a bit.
I was going to say, does he have a vampire accent?
Is
he doing a vampire accent?
This character, the twist, let's just say, if I was rewriting this movie, right? what I would do is I would make it where he was Valak and the guy we thought was Valak was just his servant. And that he was Valak the whole time. And that that because the exorcism was weird, he didn't have fangs, that he was just stuck in this transitional state and he wanted immortality. Because he comes off like you said, he's got this grin that just seems like, oh, don't turn your back. Don't turn your back because the knife's going to go right into it. Like he comes off evil from the first scene. So there's zero surprise when he is in fact, the main or behind the main villain.
Yeah, and I think he's a combination of, in Halloween 3, our main villain in that is sort of a man of principle or a man who's been around a long time and, has these strong beliefs. So it's a combination between that and then, even just from They Live, in the scene we talked quite a bit about, the drifter who had basically sold himself to the aliens to be sort of a familiar to them. He was kind of both of those characters, and he was kind of giving both the speeches they gave. One was about the tradition in Halloween 3, and the second part was kind of, in They Live. Like, I'm tired of being poor and living outside. Like, I wanted to live the good life and get a little piece of that for myself. And I think, he was like, I'm afraid of mortality, so I want to live forever. But it just wasn't played right. And then the fact that Jack Crow is just being like, I think you're a piece of shit. Like, I feel like it just makes it feel really campy because you've got like vampire accent and then you've still got James Woods going like, 150% on just being like a raging asshole in this role, or that character is just set on being that.
Yeah, it's the acting is sort of multi-placed, I guess. I don't even know how else to phrase it. It's like these people are in different movies at times.
Yeah.
Where they're acting as if they are in different. Like, I would believe that they weren't acting opposite the people they were acting at times, where it's just like, whoa, what? I mean, the only ones who seem to make sense the whole time as two people in the same scenes is Baldwin and Woods. They come across as a unit. They come across as two people who have a history, that have like that there are buddies, that work together essentially. Those two are always solid in terms of their relationship. Everybody else, it just depends what friggin', even Baldwin with Cheryl Lee is a different character 50%. He's a different character to himself 50% of the time, where he's brutal and then caring, and then brutal and then caring. And now he's, literally the last clip I have is even James Woods is like, really? You're going to give it all up for her? But so anyway, we get this big scene where they attempt to stage so essentially what they need Jack alive, of course, because they have to have a Slayer's blood to complete the ceremony.
Right.
And rather than cutting his hand where blood would more easily drip, he gets cut in the leg, which I guess is because he wanted to have a limp. That's my guess, is he wanted, I want to do a limp. Okay. So they try to recreate the ceremony, and the Padre secretly gets to the roof and shoots the Cardinal with a shotgun. So now he is officially one of the team because he just killed the Cardinal. And they, of course, managed to stop the exorcism. And then we have a big fight between Valak and Woods, which ends with Woods doing something I actually like, which is bringing the entire roof of a building down. So that
should have
Valak
done
gets
that like you recommended earlier in the movie, like in the first scene.
Better late than never. At least he finally figured it out. So he takes out this one really important load-bearing beam. Let me tell you, that beam was keeping the whole place up. So he manages to amazingly shoulder roll it without destroying his upper body. The roof collapses. Valak is destroyed. And we are left with the Padre, Woods, Cheryl Lee, who we don't see after this point in the movie at all. She, basically she tears Daniel Baldwin's throat out. He cauterizes the wound with a gun, which is something they do. He's big on cauterizing his own wounds in this movie. He does it twice. And so basically then we get what I think is a legitimately great scene in terms of acting and dialogue that's, again, feels like it's from a different movie, but is excellent. So I'm going to play this exchange between Woods and Daniel Baldwin.
I'm not a Slayer anymore, Jack. Besides, the way I figure it, the two of you got plenty to do cleaning the rest of them out.
Meanwhile, she hides in the back of the van, out of the sunlight, while you make for the border. Try to catch it by nightfall, is that it?
I need a vacation, Jack.
When did she first bite you?
2 days ago. I still covered your ass.
Yes, you did. So I'd say I owe you 2 days back. What'd you say, Padre?
You've got 2 days.
Wherever you go, I will find you. I will hunt you down. And I will kill you. The girl, too.
Vaya que Dios, my friend.
Now, in all seriousness, this is a beautiful scene. Daniel Baldwin is doing great acting where he's basically starting to tear up. This scene feels like a different movie. It's actually legitimately my favorite scene in the whole thing because it's the real, Baldwin knows he's a dead man, but, but Woods is giving him the 2 days, which he could just kill him right there. And there's this wonderful thing where when Baldwin's getting into the truck, James Woods puts his hand up to make sure he doesn't fall. It's a small thing, but it tells you everything about the relationship between these characters. And it's beautifully done. And I'm sitting here going, where is this movie? I would watch this for an hour and a half of this, but we only get this little one moment, really, of actual character development in the whole thing. And then it's followed up with the punchline joke, which I'm like, oh man, I get it, but I would have loved if it had just ended with him driving off and the two of them just kind of looking at him. But
absolutely not. Absolutely not. I disagree. I agree with you. I agree and disagree. It's a beautiful scene. If the rest of the movie was so nuanced and so well acted and even scored, I mean the score is really beautiful at this point too.
The musical, the use of music is fantastic in that scene.
Yep. Yeah, and it's the Western thing going on. It's all of that. And there's a tender moment between them. We've never seen this between any two characters. And then I think it has to get ruined. You have to have him then be like, so what do you think? Did you get, when he was pointing that gun at you, did you get wood? And he turns to, Father Adam turns to him and says mahogany. I think that's the joke. I think that's the movie that you're in. But
you are correct. You are correct.
And for a minute you're like, maybe not. Maybe this is going somewhere. Maybe this is developing, and no, it's a vampire movie.
Yeah, I guess it is just because that moment is so great that but you're right. It doesn't make any sense. That's part of the reason why it's so stunningly good is because it doesn't make sense in everything else. So I agree and disagree with you. I hate that the last thing is that joke, but it has to be because that's the movie that we're in. It is, I guess there's a part of me that thinks it's a shame because even Wood's acting is completely different. It's subtle. He's not screaming. He's talking at a normal voice, softly at times. It's just I don't even know what to make of it, but I guess it's better than nothing. And it's nice that it was at the end. But yeah, again, almost like the rest of the movie where it's just this bizarre mishmash of things that caps off the film.
I think, just like kind of looking at the whole thing here as we're kind of, wrapping the whole movie up. Yeah. I think my big takeaway is it's exactly what you've described, is that where it gets like mean and gets really sort of cruel in the center. And, the first part And the first scene, so you see them, doing the really interesting part. Like, don't you feel like half the movie could have been them just clearing buildings, like doing their job, like doing the job. And that could have been a really fun, kind of maybe more action movie where they're just clearing, buildings, and there's like different scenarios, and maybe they have to do it at a bank or something like that. Or, like there could be some really interesting ways to go about this. Kind of almost like like the Walking Dead, like a zombie task of the week. What obstacle do you have to, deal with this week? Like what kind of strange, zombie is like in a windmill or something like that.
Or a modern example would be something like Death Proof, where we get the one set of women and Stuntman Mike kills them, or Stuntman Bob. And then we get the second set of women, and it goes horribly wrong for him. So if we got in the opening thing and it was successful, they go and they party with the women, and then they do the same thing, and you're like, okay. Because honestly, objectively, the Valak stuff, they spent too much time on it because there's not enough to that story. Okay, we got it. Like you said, this is classic. We didn't even need that much of him because we know exactly what it is. So you could have put more of the team so that we got more of the camaraderie and how they work, and we would have been more attached. When they died, it would have mattered more, as opposed to people we only knew for 5 minutes, and now they're all just wiped out.
And so you lose like half the cast, or more, like 3/4 of the cast, and then it just sits in this, like, it's kind of like The Hangover, right? So like, and I don't mean the movie, I just mean like it's like a hangover where the first part is the fun part, is the night out, and then for the middle part to almost the end, it's sort of the hangover, and people are being mean to each other. There's slurs, they're being cruel, they're being homophobic, there's misogyny, there's questionable brutality, maybe even there's like a rapey vibe in it. Like there's a lot of questionable stuff that happens in the center, which is not fun. It's not a fun vampire movie. And then, like you mentioned, they get to this town and they start to, deal with the nest of Valak and try to get some of the masters out. And there's this like cool kind of cat and mouse game with the elevator, and the tension ramps back up, and kind of the excitement. And you're like, good. Okay. Well, I sat through all that stuff, all that questionable stuff, because at the end, this is going to be a really rewarding kind of, vampire movie. And it just, has this middle section. But then that quickly, we run out of time. We literally run out of sunlight, right? And then it devolves into kind of more of a, sort of, campy vampire accent. And then, poorly structured buildings. And then there's a beautiful, tender moment at the end, which is then just swallowed back up by boner jokes, basically, at the end.
Yeah. So that's vampires. I mean, that's what I this may have been exactly what Carpenter intended. And if so, then he certainly made let's put it this way. It's not a movie you quickly forget. So I will give it that. This movie is pretty much committed to memory, even though I hadn't seen it in a long time. I remembered most of it. And in particular, I remembered that end scene, and it was still as good as what I remember it being, and the opening, which is also excellent. So it's a strange film in the catalog for many, many reasons, but there's still enough in there to recommend watching it. The score is unbeatable. That you can't have, there's no criticism I could give the score whatsoever. James Woods does some interesting stuff. There's some acting in it, good or bad. It's there. And, I don't know what else we can say about it. So it's, if you've never seen it, watch it. Just, be aware that this is going to be a movie that might test your resolve a bit here and there. It's not a smooth ride.
I think if you watch the movie Salvador and you see the character James Woods played in that movie, and then you watch this character, you see this character is a caricature and kind of harmless compared to just the awful person that he plays in Salvador. And once again, there's the Montoya character too, played by Jim Belushi.
Daniel Belushi.
Daniel Belushi. Daniel Baldwin, or in Salvador, it's played by, instead of Montoya, it's Daniel Belushi. So there's that same dynamic of kind of getting a a friend involved in your just relentless pursuit and being an asshole. Yeah.
I'll make a recommendation. Put a movie in between Salvador and vampires. Put Videodrome in the middle, and then you're moving the needle towards where we're going to be in vampires. Because
absolutely,
it's not like Woods is exactly a choir boy in Videodrome. So that's
and he has a history of playing that character so well.
Oh, he does.
So well.
I mean, I really honestly can't imagine who else would fit into this role. So I will give him that. I don't know who else would have done it this way, as put quotes around the word effectively. So, I credit where it's due. All modern things being put aside, but yeah, that's vampires, and that brings us amazingly to the end of our 6-film run. And every episode has gotten longer. This one is going to be about 3.5 to 4 hours, whatever.
Oh man,
yeah. Hey, whatever.
Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you so much for inviting me on to do this and let me be part of this. It's been so much fun, obviously, just to talk with you and talk movies, but also to really kind of dissect these films, good or bad, things we agree with, things we don't agree with. But I think it was great to kind of like rewatch these in a more critical way, and then of course, catch up with you. So thanks so much, Joe.
Oh, yeah, this was an absolute blast. I mean, and honestly, if nothing else, I hope it does get people who've never really looked at Carpenter that much to do that, because obviously we've spent upwards of 7 or 8 hours now in total just talking about these movies, and this is only 6 of his catalog. We didn't even talk about some of the big ones.
Yeah,
so
really
it is a director worth seeking out. And the nice part is, as you mentioned, I think in the first part, the versatility means that almost anybody can watch a Carpenter movie and find one or two that they absolutely love. You may not love them all, and I don't. I won't pretend I do. But there are a number of them that I adore and own copies of, and that's kind of my highest thing. If I buy a physical copy, that means it's really good, and I have several Carpenters. With Vampires, interestingly, I own the soundtrack, but not the film, so take from that what you will.
One last thing. Surprisingly, I didn't know this, but you talk about like who's actually watching these films. Stephen Colbert, who, obviously, apparently when he's not feeling well and when he's like kind of dealing with either not so much depression, but just like having a rough time of it, he says he goes and he watches The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing. And his family knows when he's watching that movie that he needs his like kind of alone time and needs to kind of drift away into that movie. And I just think about like Stephen Colbert, he's an interesting guy, very funny comedian and host, but even he like, he has this history and is drawn to Carpenter's films. So, I think we often say they're kind of subversive and sometimes, kind of B movies, but they definitely have had an impact on a lot of people and before and since.
Yeah. That's what I mean about it. If nothing else comes out of all this, if it gets some people to give his stuff a try that they never did, or maybe they've only seen Halloween or the mainline ones, I'm glad that we didn't just pick the ones everybody knows. I mean, Escape from New York is the only real one I think out of the whole list that is, and They Live too, but even They Live, I don't know. I mean, again, in the modern context, I think most people just think Halloween and The Thing and probably Escape from New York, and maybe have never watched or watched very few other ones. So any one of the ones we've covered, I would say is worth watching. Again, what you get out of them may vary, but I don't think any of them are not worth watching, and they do demonstrate the range that this man has in terms of what he can deliver. So,
absolutely.
Well, one more reminder, Music for Billionaires, go buy it. And on that note, I hope you have enjoyed this journey. And Doug, I agree. It's been. I want to do some more of these at some point. So not Carpenter. We'll do some more of these. But this has been
different director, but definitely.
Boy, am I glad I fired off that random email while I was sitting off on the couch.
I'm glad you did too.
This has just been it's been a blast reconnecting with you and being able to go through these films. And this has just been an absolute treat, top to bottom, because I could talk about Carpenter all day long, and obviously so can you. And it's been a great time, so thanks for doing it.
Can I ask you a question, Joe?
Absolutely.
When we were doing this podcast, did you get a little bit of wood or
mahogany? Teak. I believe he says teak. Yeah, it was the last one. So yeah, teak. You bet. All right, everybody, on that wonderful ending note, thank you for listening, and we'll see you on whatever the next show ends up being. Take care, everyone. Visit OzoneNightmare.com to subscribe to new episodes, browse through our back catalog, or to find links to support the show. Follow @OzoneNightmare on Twitter for the latest episode postings and other show information. If 280 characters just isn't enough, you can always email us at ozonenightmare@gmail.com. Music for Ozone Late Night is provided by Ogre. Visit ogresounds.bandcamp.com to hear and purchase his fantastic selection of music.